Picture the first light of dawn breaking over the Ganges. The river moves like molten silver through mist-shrouded ghats, carrying with it the whispers of 5,000 years. Ancient stone steps descend into waters that have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of philosophies, and perhaps, just perhaps, the fading echoes of technologies we can barely comprehend today. The morning mist rises from the sacred waters, revealing temples whose foundations sink deep into layers of history. Each stone tells a story. Each carved pillar holds secrets that mainstream archaeology has only begun to decipher. This is India land, where mythology and reality dance together in an eternal embrace, where the line between legend and lost knowledge blurs like smoke in the dawn air. High above the river plains, the Himalayas stand sentinel. These mountains have watched civilizations bloom and vanish like flowers in an endless cosmic season. Their snow-capped peaks catch the first rays of sunlight, illuminating a landscape that has cradled humanity's oldest dreams and darkest mysteries. Between these eternal mountains and the flowing waters below lies a subcontinent that may hold answers to questions we're only beginning to ask. Walk through the ruins of Hampi at twilight. The red sandstone glows like dying embers as shadows stretch across elaborate carvings. Temple complexes sprawl across kilometers, their precision and scale defying simple explanations. Who designed these acoustic marvels? What knowledge guided the placement of each stone? The official narrative speaks of skilled craftsmen and devoted kings. But what if there's more to the story? In the dusty archives of libraries from Varanasi to Chennai, palm leaf manuscripts crumble with age. These texts speak of flying machines that traveled between worlds, weapons that could level mountains, and healing arts that conquered death itself. Scholars dismiss most of these accounts as mythology elaborate metaphors created by ancient poets with vivid imaginations. Yet the descriptions are often startlingly technical, filled with measurements, materials, and methods that seem oddly specific for pure fantasy. Consider the iron pillar standing in Delhi's courtyard. For 16 centuries, it has resisted rust and decay, its surface unmarked by time's relentless march. Modern metallurgy struggles to explain its composition. The official story credits ancient Indian ironworkers with exceptional skill. But exceptional skill or exceptional knowledge that we've somehow lost along the way? The satellite images tell their own story. From space, ancient river channels emerge like ghost rivers beneath the modern landscape. The legendary Saraswati, described in the Vedas as mightier than the Ganges, reveals itself through remote sensing technology. The river that sustained a civilization larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined vanished from human memory until technology allowed us to see through time itself. These are not isolated mysteries. They form a patterned fragments of something larger, older, more sophisticated than our textbooks suggest. In the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, we find city planning that rivals modern urban design. Drainage systems more advanced than those in medieval Europe. Standardized weights and measures that speak of centralized authority and systematic thinking on a scale that challenges our assumptions about ancient capabilities. The storytellers of old India spoke in layers. Surface meanings for common ears, deeper truths for those who knew how to listen. The Mahabharata describes weapons that sound remarkably like guided missiles. The Ramayana speaks of aircraft capable of interplanetary travel. The Vedas contain mathematical concepts that wouldn't be rediscovered in the West for millennia. What if these weren't metaphors? What if they were memories? The sun sets over the ruins of Vijayanagara, painting the sky in shades of saffron and gold. Monolithic stones balance impossibly without mortar, their surfaces polished to mirror like perfection by techniques we can't replicate today. The acoustic properties of certain halls create sonic experiences that modern sound engineers struggle to understand. Who were the architects of these marvels? What drove them to encode such precise knowledge in stone? As darkness falls, the ancient observatories come alive with shadow and starlight. The Jantar-Mantar complexes track celestial movements with an accuracy that astounds modern astronomers. But these weren't built for simple timekeeping. They reveal a deep understanding of cosmic cycles, planetary motions, and astronomical phenomena that suggests their creators possessed knowledge far beyond what survival required. The mystery deepens when we consider the timescales involved. Hindu cosmology speaks of vast cycles, kalpas and yugas, spanning millions of years. Western thought dismissed these as mythological exaggeration. Yet modern science has revealed that Earth's history does indeed unfold across such immense timelines. Did ancient India somehow understand geological time before geology existed? In remote temples, master craftsmen still practice skills passed down through generations. They speak of techniques learned from teachers who learned from teachers, stretching back into the mists of prehistory. Some of this knowledge defies easy categorization acoustic principles that seem to manipulate vibration itself, metallurgical processes that create alloys with impossible properties, architectural methods that allow massive stones to be placed with mathematical precision. The British colonial administration documented many of these anomalies with typical bureaucratic thoroughness. Their reports, gathering dust in London archives, describe rocket technology centuries ahead of European development, surgical procedures that wouldn't be matched in the West until modern times, and philosophical concepts that parallel discoveries in quantum physics. What emerges from this mosaic of mysteries is a possibility that challenges our linear view of human progress. What if civilization doesn't always move forward in a straight line? What if knowledge can be lost as well as gained? What if ancient India represents not the beginning of human achievement, but the twilight of something even more extraordinary? The rivers continue to flow, the mountains stand eternal watch, and somewhere in the accumulated whispers of 5 millennia, the truth waits to be rediscovered. This is the journey we're about to undertake, a voyage through time and mystery, following clues left by a civilization that may have known secrets we've yet to imagine. As night settles over the subcontinent, stars emerge in configurations the ancient astronomers knew by heart. The same constellations that guided Vedic sages through their calculations now bear witness to our modern search for understanding. Perhaps in their eternal light, we'll find the keys to unlock India's greatest mystery, the possibility that our ancestors achieved heights of knowledge and technology that we only now beginning to climb toward once again. The temple bells of Varanasi fade into pre-dawn silence as we turn our attention to humanity as old as songs, the Vedas. These aren't merely religious texts gathering dust in scholarly archives. They're acoustic time capsules, preserving knowledge in rhythmic verses that were never meant to be written down. For over 3,000 years, these hymns passed from teacher to student through an unbroken chain of memory, their every syllable preserved with mathematical precision. Listen to a Vedic recitation in the gathering darkness before sunrise. The sound ripples through ancient stones like water, finding its natural course. Each verse carries multiple meanings, surface prayers for rain and prosperity, deeper layers of astronomical observation, and perhaps deepest of all, technical knowledge encoded in sacred poetry. The Rig Veda, oldest of these collections, speaks of Indra's thunderbolt with startling specificity. This isn't the simple club of primitive mythology. The descriptions detail a weapon that blazes with electrical fire, strikes with the force of colliding worlds, and leaves behind traces that glow in darkness. Modern readers might recognize something familiar in these ancient verses, something that sounds remarkably like plasma technology or electromagnetic warfare. Consider the hymns dedicated to the Ashwins, the divine physicians. They speak of healing arts that restore sight to the blind, replace severed limbs, and even bring the dead back to life. Mainstream interpretation sees these as metaphorical hopes, spiritual healing couched in physical terms. But the Sanskrit terminology uses precise medical vocabulary words for surgical procedures, anatomical parts, and pharmaceutical preparations that suggest intimate familiarity with advanced healing practices. The creation hymns present another puzzle wrapped in poetry. The Nasadiya Sukta describes the universe's birth in terms that echo Big Bang cosmology, a primordial void, the emergence of energy from nothingness, the expansion of space itself. How did Bronze Age poets arrive at concepts that modern astrophysics has only recently confirmed? Were these insights born from meditation and philosophical intuition, or did they preserve older scientific knowledge in sacred song? The astronomical references scattered throughout Vedic texts reveal mathematical sophistication that challenges comfortable assumptions about ancient capabilities. The hymns describe planetary periods, eclipse calculations, and stellar observations with numerical precision. They speak of cosmic cycles spanning millions of years timescales that Western thought could not accept until geology forced recognition of deep time. More intriguing still are the technical passages hidden within religious language. The Atharva Veda contains detailed instructions for what scholars politely term magical procedures, but stripped of supernatural interpretation. These descriptions often read like technical manuals, step-by-step processes involving specific materials, precise measurements, and controlled environmental conditions. The Soma hymns present perhaps the most tantalizing mystery. Over 100 verses celebrate this divine elixir, describing its preparation, effects, and significance in elaborate detail. Scholars have proposed everything from fermented grain drinks to psychedelic mushrooms. But the descriptions suggest something far more sophisticated, a biotechnological preparation that enhances perception, prolongs life, and grants access to expanded consciousness. The language itself holds clues. Sanskrit contains an unusual number of technical terms for aerial vehicles, energy manipulation, and what can only be described as advanced engineering concepts. Why would a pastoral society develop such specialized vocabulary unless they had practical need for these concepts? The standard explanation suggests poetic imagination, but imagination typically builds on familiar foundations. The Yajur Veda's ritual instructions read like operational manuals when examined closely. The precise measurements, specific materials, and exact timing requirements suggest processes designed to achieve predictable results rather than symbolic gestures. Archaeological evidence reveals that Vedic fire altars were constructed with mathematical precision, their proportions following complex geometric principles that serve no obvious ritual purpose. Perhaps most remarkably, the Vedas describe energy fields and wave phenomena using terminology that would seem out of place in a physics textbook. They speak of subtle vibrations that underlie physical reality, energy patterns that can be manipulated through sound and intention, and fields of force that connect all matter throughout the universe. The preservation method itself hints at the text's importance. The elaborate mnemonic systems used to maintain perfect transmission across centuries suggest these were not casual songs, but crucial information that could not be allowed to decay. The cross-checking mechanisms built into the recitation traditions, where multiple students memorized the same passages in different patterns, reveal a level of concern usually reserved for vital technical knowledge. The geographical references within the hymns have proven archaeologically accurate in surprising ways. Rivers described in the Vedas have been rediscovered through satellite imagery. Mountain locations mentioned in passing have been verified through geological surveys. This precision suggests the texts preserve genuine historical memory rather than purely mythological landscapes. The mathematical concepts embedded in Vedic texts exceed what Bronze Age farmers would need for practical agriculture. References to infinity, zero, and complex geometric relationships appear throughout the verses. The architectural instructions hidden within ritual descriptions employ advanced engineering principles. The astronomical calculations exceed the accuracy required for simple calendar keeping. As morning light illuminates the pages of palm leaf manuscripts in Kerala's libraries, we glimpse fragments of something vast and carefully preserved. The Vedas may be sacred songs, but they're also time capsules carriers of knowledge that their preservers deemed too valuable to lose, even when the civilizations that created that knowledge had faded into legend. The verses continue their ancient rhythm, carrying forward secrets encoded in sacred sound. Whether divine revelation or preserved science, the Vedas represent humanity's oldest attempt to capture ultimate knowledge in permanent form. In their careful preservation across millennia, we see the dedication of countless generations who understood they were guardians of something precious, something that must not be allowed to vanish into the silence of forgotten time. Dawn breaks over the carved stone galleries of Angkor Wat, where celestial dancers seem to float in eternal motion across temple walls. But these aren't the only aerial figures preserved in South Asian stone. Throughout India's ancient monuments, we find depictions of vehicles that soar through clouds and stars, the Vimanas, flying palaces of gods and kings that challenge our understanding of ancient imagination and possibility. The Ramayana describes Ravana's Pushpaka Vimana with the precision of a technical manual. This wasn't a simple chariot pulled by winged horses. The text details a multi-story aerial vehicle capable of interplanetary travel, equipped with weapon systems, comfortable quarters, and propulsion mechanisms that operated without visible means of support. The descriptions include specific measurements, materials, and operational procedures that seem remarkably technical for pure mythology. Picture the scene as described in ancient verses: a craft that moves without sound through the upper atmosphere, its hull gleaming like burnished gold, its occupants protected from the thin air of high-altitude flight. Windows that provide clear vision in all directions. Navigation systems that track position relative to ground landmarks and celestial bodies. Landing capabilities that allow precise touchdown in predetermined locations. The Vaimanika Shastra, though controversial in its attribution and dating, provides even more detailed technical specifications. It describes different classes of Vimanas, some designed for atmospheric flight, others capable of interplanetary travel, still others optimized for reconnaissance and warfare. The text includes diagrams showing internal mechanisms, propulsion systems, and what can only be described as advanced aerodynamic principles. Modern aviation engineers who have studied these descriptions find curious parallels to actual aircraft design. The proportional relationships between different components match aerodynamic requirements for stable flight. The materials specified certain metal alloys and crystalline substances align with properties needed for high-speed atmospheric travel. The power systems described sound remarkably like plasma or electromagnetic propulsion concepts that cutting-edge research is only beginning to explore. The Mahabharata's aerial battles read like science fiction written millennia before the genre existed. Vimanas engage in dogfights among the clouds, launching guided missiles and deploying defensive countermeasures. The descriptions include details about radar-like detection systems, communication networks between vehicles, and tactical maneuvers that suggest familiarity with three-dimensional aerial combat. Archaeological evidence adds weight to these literary accounts. The cave paintings of Chhattisgarh depict disc-shaped objects in the sky, attended by figures in what appear to be protective suits. Ancient coins from various Indian kingdoms show aerial vehicles as standard royal symbols, not mythological flourishes, but seemingly accepted elements of political iconography. The technical terminology used in Sanskrit texts for aerial vehicles is surprisingly specific. Different words describe different types of flight hovering: rapid ascent, horizontal cruising, vertical descent. The vocabulary includes terms for navigation, propulsion, defensive systems, and crew operations that suggest intimate familiarity with actual aircraft rather than purely imaginary constructions. Temple sculptures throughout South India show detailed depictions of aerial vehicles with occupants. The carving precision reveals vehicles with multiple decks, external appendages that might serve as control surfaces, and propulsion systems represented by stylized flame or energy patterns. These aren't crude artistic impressions, but but detailed technical illustrations preserved in stone. The texts describe different categories of aerial phenomena. Some Vimanas are clearly artificial vehicles operated by pilots. Others appear to be natural atmospheric phenomena observed and catalogued by ancient scientists. Still others might represent intermediate technologies, perhaps remotely controlled devices or automated systems that operated according to programmed instructions. The fuel systems described in various texts present another puzzle. Some Vimanas operated using mercury-based engines that created electromagnetic fields. Others used solar collection systems or drew power from atmospheric electricity. The most advanced models allegedly operated by manipulating what the texts call gravitational threads, perhaps referring to field propulsion concepts that modern physics is only beginning to understand. Navigation methods described in ancient texts show sophisticated understanding of both terrestrial and celestial reference systems. Vimana pilots used ground landmarks, star positions, and what sounds like inertial guidance systems to maintain course during long-distance travel. The accuracy required for interplanetary journeys, described in some texts, would demand navigation precision that challenges ancient technological assumptions. The military applications described in the Mahabharata suggest aerial vehicles capable of deploying weapons with devastating effectiveness. The texts describe guided projectiles launched from flying platforms, aerial bombardment of ground targets, and air-to-air combat between opposing Vimana fleets. The tactical sophistication implies command and control systems that could coordinate multiple vehicles in complex battle scenarios. Perhaps most intriguingly, some descriptions suggest Vimanas possessed capabilities that transcend conventional aircraft performance. Instantaneous travel across vast distances, the ability to become invisible to ground observers, dimensional travel that allowed movement between different levels of reality. These accounts push beyond even advanced technology into realms that challenge physical law itself. The Vedic texts mention flight schools where pilots trained in Vimana operation. The curriculum apparently included not only technical skills, but also what might be called consciousness development, mental disciplines that enhanced piloting ability and allowed interface with advanced control systems. This suggests a technology that integrated human consciousness with mechanical systems in ways modern aviation hasn't achieved. As sunset paints the sky above Hampi's ruins, we're left with questions that hover like aerial mysteries themselves. Were the Vimanas pure mythology, elaborate fantasies born from human dreams of flight? Were they memories of actual advanced technology, preserved in story form long after the original capabilities had been lost? Or do they represent something else entirely phenomena that ancient observers documented as best they could within their conceptual frameworks? The stone dancers continue their eternal aerial ballet, frozen in graceful flight across temple walls. Perhaps they know secrets about human flight that we're only beginning to rediscover. Secrets encoded in ancient verses that speak of times when the sky itself was humanity's highway to the stars. In the heart of Delhi's Qutub complex stands a monument that defies time itself. The iron pillar of Ashoka rises like a dark finger, pointing toward mysteries we're only beginning to understand. For 16 centuries, this column has stood exposed to monsoon rains, desert winds, the corrosive touch of countless hands. Yet its surface remains, unmarked by rust, untouched by decay, as perfect as the day ancient metalworkers completed their impossible task. Picture the scene in the 4th century when craftsmen assembled this marvel. No blast furnaces roared in the background. Those wouldn't appear in India for another 1,000 years. No industrial infrastructure supported the project. Yet somehow, using techniques lost to history, they created an iron alloy that modern metallurgy struggles to replicate. The pillar contains over 6 tons of metal, forged into a single seamless column, welded with precision that leaves no visible joints. The mainstream explanation credits exceptional skill among ancient Indian ironworkers. Archaeological evidence does support advanced metallurgy in classical India Damascus steel, Wootz iron, and various specialized alloys that European smiths couldn't match until the industrial age. Indian metalworkers understood carbon content, temperature control, and atmospheric manipulation in ways that produced superior results through apparently primitive methods. But the Ashoka pillar exceeds even these acknowledged achievements. Modern analysis reveals an iron composition that should rust rapidly under Delhi's climate conditions. The phosphorus content, while higher than typical modern iron, doesn't fully explain the extraordinary corrosion resistance. Recent microscopic examination shows a protective layer that forms naturally on the pillar as surface, a passive film that regenerates itself when damaged, creating permanent protection against oxidation. The forging process itself presents puzzles that contemporary metallurgists find difficult to explain. Creating a seamless 6-ton iron column requires temperatures, pressures, and atmospheric controls that challenge assumptions about ancient capabilities. The metal shows internal consistency that suggests advanced smelting techniques and quality control methods that modern industry might envy. Archaeological investigation around the pillar's base has revealed additional mysteries. The foundation extends deep underground, employing engineering principles that suggest knowledge of soil mechanics, weight distribution, and seismic stability. The pillar has survived numerous earthquakes that toppled neighboring structures. Its stability apparently built into the original design through sophisticated understanding of structural dynamics. The inscriptions carved into the pillar's surface add another layer to the mystery. Emperor Ashoka's edicts were carved centuries after the column's initial construction, suggesting the pillar already existed as an ancient monument when the Mauryan Empire reached its height. The metal's hardness made carving difficult, yet the inscriptions show precise lettering that required specialized tools and techniques. Chemical analysis has identified trace elements in the iron that don't match any known ancient ore sources. The metal appears to combine materials from different geographical regions, suggesting supply chains and trade networks that brought exotic components together for this specific project. Some researchers propose that the pillar represents collaborative metallurgy involving knowledge from multiple civilizations. The positioning and orientation of the pillar follow astronomical alignments that suggest its placement wasn't arbitrary. The column's shadow falls across specific ground markers at significant seasonal moments, implying integration with observational astronomy. This celestial connection hints at purposes beyond simple monument construction. Perhaps the pillar served as part of a larger precision instrument for tracking cosmic cycles. Environmental testing around the pillar has revealed electromagnetic anomalies that conventional geology struggles to explain. Compass readings fluctuate near the column's base. Electronic instruments show interference patterns that suggest the metal itself generates or focuses electromagnetic fields. These effects might result from the iron's unusual composition, but they also recall ancient texts describing metallic objects that possessed quasi-magical properties. Comparative studies of other ancient iron artifacts reveal that the Ashoka pillar isn't entirely unique. Similar corrosion-resistant iron appears in various locations across India temple fixtures, ceremonial weapons, architectural elements suggesting a widespread metallurgical tradition that achieved results modern industry finds difficult to match. This consistency implies systematic knowledge rather than accidental discovery. The manufacturing techniques required to create such objects pose engineering challenges that push beyond accepted ancient capabilities. The uniform composition throughout the pillar's mass suggests controlled atmospheric conditions during forging. The absence of internal flaws implies quality testing methods that could detect structural weaknesses. The surface finish indicates polishing techniques that achieved mirror-like smoothness using unknown procedures. Recent experiments attempting to replicate the pillar's metallurgy have produced mixed results. Modern foundries can create similar alloys, but achieving the same corrosion resistance requires industrial processes that weren't available to ancient metalworkers. A passive protection layer that shields the original pillar from oxidation forms through mechanisms that current science doesn't fully understand. The pillar's cultural significance adds depth to its technical mysteries. Hindu traditions regard certain metals as possessing consciousness-responsive substances that interact with human intention and cosmic forces. The iron column figures in local legends as a wish-fulfilling tree made of metal, a bridge between earthly and celestial realms, a repository of ancient wisdom encoded in atomic structure itself. Folklore preserves stories about the pillar's creation that modern ears dismiss as mythology, but that might contain fragmentary technical knowledge. Tales speak of mastersmiths who could communicate with metals, forging processes that involved cosmic timing, and alloys that combined earthly materials with celestial substances. These narratives might preserve actual metallurgical techniques translated into symbolic language that oral tradition could maintain across centuries. As twilight settles over Delhi's ancient precinct, the iron pillar catches the last rays of sunlight like a dark beacon. Its surface gleams with the same perfection that amazed visitors 16 centuries ago. Somewhere in its molecular structure lie secrets that challenge our understanding of what ancient technology could achieve, and perhaps what it actually did achieve in ages before industrial civilization learned to manipulate metal with such impossible precision. The pillar stands as silent testimony to capabilities we've lost and are slowly rediscovering. In its enduring perfection, we glimpse the possibility that our ancestors achieved mastery over matter itself through knowledge that history has forgotten, but that metal memory preserves in rust-free defiance of times of touch. The Indus River moves like a serpent of silver through the Pakistani landscape, carrying with it the silt of millennia and the whispers of a civilization that vanished before history began to write its own name. Along this river's ancient banks lie the ruins of cities that challenge everything we thought we knew about humanity's urban beginnings. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, where Bronze Age engineers created metropolitan marvels that wouldn't be matched for another 3,000 years. Walk through the excavated streets of Harappa in the early morning light. The grid pattern emerges from archaeological precision like a blueprint materialized in brick and stone. These weren't organic settlements that grew randomly around water sources or trade routes. They were planned communities, designed with mathematical precision by minds that understood urban engineering on a scale that defies comfortable assumptions about ancient capabilities. The street layout follows principles that modern city planners recognize as optimal urban design. Main thoroughfares run precisely north-south and east-west, creating rectangular blocks that maximize traffic flow and minimize congestion. Side streets connect at right angles, forming a hierarchical network that separates local access from through traffic. The proportional relationships between different street widths suggest sophisticated understanding of pedestrian movement, cart traffic, and crowd dynamics. But it's the infrastructure beneath these ancient streets that truly astounds modern engineers. The drainage system at Mohenjo-Daro represents perhaps the most advanced urban sanitation network created before the Roman Empire. Every house connects to covered drains that channel waste away from residential areas. Manholes allow access for cleaning and maintenance. Settling chambers separate solid waste from liquid effluent. The gradient calculations ensure proper flow without stagnation or overflow. Picture the engineering meetings that must have preceded construction. Surveyors calculating elevations across kilometers of urban landscape. Hydraulic engineers designing pressure systems that would function reliably for centuries. Materials specialists determining brick compositions that could withstand constant moisture exposure. Project managers coordinating construction phases across an entire metropolitan region. The standardization reveals systematic thinking that exceeds what isolated city-states typically achieve. Bricks throughout the Indus Valley follow identical proportional relationships: length, width, and height maintain the same ratios whether found in Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, or smaller settlements hundreds of kilometers apart. Weights and measures show similar consistency, suggesting centralized authority capable of enforcing technical standards across vast geographical areas. The construction techniques themselves present puzzles that archaeologists continue to investigate. The bricks were fired in kilns that achieved uniform temperatures throughout large batches. The mortar shows sophisticated understanding of hydraulic cement that remains waterproof after 4 millennia. The structural engineering incorporates earthquake-resistant principles that allowed these buildings to survive seismic events that toppled later constructions. Advanced metallurgy appears throughout Harappan sites. Bronze tools show alloy compositions optimized for specific functions, harder cutting edges for precision work, more flexible bodies for tools that needed to bend without breaking. Furnaces reached temperatures that required controlled airflow and fuel management beyond simple wood burning. The precision of small artifacts, jewelry, seals, measuring instruments implies manufacturing capabilities that rival medieval European guilds. The urban planning extends beyond simple functionality into what can only be described as quality of life considerations. Houses feature private wells, personal bathrooms, and what appear to be early air conditioning systems, courtyard designs that create cooling airflow patterns. Public buildings include what archaeologists interpret as community centers, administrative complexes, and possibly educational institutions. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro represents engineering achievement that wouldn't be matched until Ramon Thermi. The structure maintains watertight integrity through bitumen waterproofing applied with techniques that modern swimming pool builders recognize as sophisticated. The steps are precisely proportioned for safe entry and exit. The drainage system allows controlled filling and emptying. The surrounding galleries suggest ceremonial or administrative functions that integrated engineering with social purposes. Water management throughout these cities reveals understanding of hydrology that extends beyond basic needs. Reservoirs collect and store rainwater during monsoon seasons. Distribution systems carry water throughout urban areas using pressure differentials and flow controls. Wastewater receives treatment before discharge into rivers, protecting downstream communities from contamination. The dockyards at Lawful demonstrate maritime engineering that rivals medieval European ports. Tidal locks control water levels to accommodate ships of different sizes. Warehouse foundations show sophisticated understanding of load-bearing requirements for storing heavy cargo. The orientation aligns with prevailing winds and current patterns that would optimize sailing, schedules, and weather protection. Perhaps most mysteriously, the cities show no evidence of warfare, defensive fortifications, or military infrastructure. No weapons caches, no fortified gates, no watchtowers or military quarters appear in the archaeological record. This suggests either remarkable political stability maintained across centuries, or defensive capabilities so advanced they left no physical traces, or perhaps social organization that transcended the military conflicts that characterized other early civilizations. The writing system found throughout Harappan sites remains undeciphered despite decades of scholarly effort. The script appears on seals, pottery, and various artifacts, suggesting widespread literacy, or at least systematic record-keeping. The symbols show consistency across geographical regions and time periods, implying standardized communication systems that supported the civilization's remarkable organizational cohesion. The sudden abandonment of these cities around 1900 BCE presents one of archaeology's great mysteries. No signs of conquest, natural disaster, or gradual decline appear in the final archaeological layers. The inhabitants seem to have simply left, taking their knowledge and techniques with them into historical obscurity. Were they responding to climate change, political upheaval, or something else entirely? As sunset illuminates the excavated foundations of Mohenjo-daro, shadows fall across streets that once bustled with urban life more sophisticated than anything Europe would see for another 2 millennia. The precision-laid bricks hold secrets about human organization, technical knowledge, and urban planning that challenge linear assumptions about civilization's development. In the gathering darkness, we are left wondering whether these cities represent humanity's first attempts at urban planning, or perhaps the final expressions of knowledge inherited from sources even more ancient and mysterious. The grid patterns endure, mapped in archaeological precision, witnesses to minds that understood cities as living systems requiring engineering excellence that modern metropolises still struggle to achieve. From orbit, the Earth reveals its secrets in patterns invisible to ground-based observers. Satellite imaging pierces through soil and vegetation, exposing ancient riverbeds like pale scars across the landscape of northwestern India and Pakistan. These ghostly waterways tell the story of the Saraswati River, so mighty that Vedic poets called it river of rivers, yet so thoroughly vanished that scholars once dismissed it as pure mythology. The discovery began in the 1970s when satellite photography revealed what ground surveys had missed for over a century. Across the Thar Desert in the Punjab plains, a massive paleocanal emerged from spaced observation, the dried course of a river system that once dwarfed the modern Ganges. The satellite data showed not just one river, but an entire network, with tributaries spreading across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers in what was once the world's largest fluvial system. Picture this vanished landscape as the Vedas describe it: a broad river flowing from the Himalayas toward the Arabian Sea, its banks lined with prosperous settlements and sophisticated cities. The Rig Veda dedicates entire hymns to Saraswati's glory, describing it as surpassing in majesty and might all other waters, and pure and course from mountains to the sea. These were not metaphorical celebrations, but geographical descriptions of a real river system that sustained a civilization larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Archaeological surveys guided by satellite imagery have confirmed what ancient texts preserved in sacred verse. Along the dried river channel, excavations reveal settlement after settlement, more than 1,500. Harappan sites clustered along Saraswati's banks, compared to fewer than 200 along the Indus River itself. The civilization that we call Indus Valley was actually centered on a different river entirely, one that carried their culture's achievements into geological oblivion. The timeline, reconstructed through multiple scientific disciplines, tells a story of civilizational rise and catastrophic change. Around 3000 BCE, the Saraswati system reached its peak flow, fed by glacial melt from the Himalayas and monsoon rains that were stronger and more reliable than today's patterns. The river provided the water resources that supported urban populations, intensive agriculture, and the trade networks that connected Harappan civilization with distant regions. Geological evidence reveals the mechanism of the river's death. Tectonic shifts in the Himalayas captured the Saraswati's glacial tributaries, redirecting them toward the Ganges and Indus systems. Climate change reduced monsoon intensity, cutting the river's rainfall supply. Over several centuries, the mighty Saraswati shrank to seasonal streams, then disappeared entirely, leaving only salt flats and desert where a thriving riverine civilization once flourished. The Vedic texts preserve detailed geographical knowledge of this vanished landscape. They describe the river's course from the Har-ki-Dun Glacier through specific mountain passes, across particular plains, past named settlements, and finally into the sea at a location that satellite archaeology has identified as the Rann of Kutch. This precision suggests the hymns weren't composed after the river's disappearance, but during its flowing years, preserving authentic geographical memory through oral tradition. Hydrogeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have mapped the Saraswati's buried course in remarkable detail. The Paleocanal shows evidence of multiple flow periods separated by dry phases, suggesting the river experienced several death and revival cycles before its final disappearance. During peak flow periods, The main channel reached widths of 7 to 10 kilometers, a truly massive waterway that would have supported navigation by substantial vessels. The implications challenge comfortable assumptions about Vedic chronology and historical development. If the Rig Veda contains accurate geographical descriptions of the flowing Saraswati, then significant portions of Vedic literature must predate the river's final disappearance around 2000 to 1500 BCE. This places Vedic composition much earlier than most mainstream scholars accept, suggesting the texts preserve knowledge from a period when Indian civilization achieved heights that historical records don't acknowledge. Environmental reconstruction reveals the Saraswati Basin as a subtropical paradise during its prime. Paleobotanical evidence shows dense forests, abundant wildlife, and agricultural productivity that supported population densities comparable to modern urban regions. The climate was more temperate, the monsoons more reliable, and the water table higher than anything seen in recent millennia. The region that is now largely desert once bloomed with a prosperity that ancient poets struggled to capture in words. The civilization supported by this vanished river achieved technological and organizational capabilities that continue to puzzle archaeologists. Harappan cities along the Saraswati show evidence of planned urban development, advanced metallurgy, sophisticated craft production, and trade networks spanning from Central Asia to the Arabian Peninsula. The river system provided the transportation infrastructure that made this far-flung commerce possible. Recent discoveries have revealed that the Saraswati's influence extended beyond India's current borders. Satellite archaeology has traced possible paleocanals connecting with Central Asian river systems, suggesting the Saraswati Basin was part of an intercontinental waterway network. This would explain how cultural elements, technological innovations, and possibly populations moved between the Harappan civilization and contemporary cultures in Afghanistan, Iran, and beyond. The river's memory persists in ways that science is only beginning to understand. Groundwater surveys reveal massive aquifers following the ancient river course fossil water trapped underground for millennia. Some of this water shows chemical signatures indicating it fell as rain when the Saraswati still flowed, preserved in geological formations like liquid time capsules from a vanished world. Local folklore throughout the region preserves stories of the great river that once blessed the land with abundance. These oral traditions, dismissed by earlier scholars as mythology, now appear to contain authentic historical memory passed down through generations. Villages along the Palea Canal maintain ritual connections to the invisible river, performing ceremonies at specific sites that satellite imagery has revealed as major confluences in the ancient system. The search for Saraswati has revealed other vanished rivers throughout northern India, an entire network of paleocanals that once supported dense populations and sophisticated cultures. Climate reconstructions suggest these rivers disappeared during a series of environmental changes that transformed the subcontinent's geography, possibly triggering migrations that carried Harappan knowledge into other regions and different cultural contexts. As moonlight illuminates the Thar Desert, where the Saraswati once flowed, we glimpse the fragility of even mighty civilizations. Rivers that seem eternal can vanish. Cities that appear permanent can be swallowed by shifting sands. And entire cultures can disappear so completely that their existence becomes legendary. Yet satellite technology and archaeological persistence have restored the Saraswati to history, proving that memory can outlast the rivers themselves. The rediscovered river reminds us that our planet's geography isn't as stable as human lifespans suggest. Climate shifts, tectonic forces, and hydrological changes operate on timescales that can erase civilizations without leaving obvious traces for future archaeologists. The Saraswati story suggests that other lost civilizations might lie hidden beneath landscapes we have ain't yet learned to read, their achievements preserved only in myths that await scientific validation. The battlefield falls silent in the pre-dawn darkness as we open the Mahabharata to passages that read like military reports from a war fought with weapons that shouldn't exist. The epic descriptions of divine armaments stretch far beyond bronze spears and iron swords into realms of destructive capability that sound remarkably like classified military technology from our own atomic age. Consider the Brahmastra, the ultimate weapon wielded by Arjuna and other warriors in humanity's first recorded epic. The text describes it with unsettling precision. A projectile that travels faster than thought, creates explosions brighter than 1,000 suns, and leaves behind devastation that renders entire regions uninhabitable for generations. The affected areas become cursed lands where nothing grows, where water turns poisonous, and where those who venture near develop mysterious illnesses that consume their bodies from within. A Sanskrit terminology used to describe these weapons contains vocabulary that seems oddly specific for purely mythological armaments. Different classes of projectiles receive distinct names based on their targeting capabilities, destructive effects, and operational requirements. The Narayanastra seeks out enemy forces with apparent intelligence, adjusting its course to follow fleeing targets. The Pashupatastra releases multiple warheads that can devastate entire armies. The Vaishnavastra appears to be some form of guided missile that never misses its intended target. Picture the scene as the Mahabharata describes Krishna's instruction to Arjuna about these fearsome weapons. The conversation reads like a briefing on weapons of mass destruction, complete with warnings about environmental contamination, civilian casualties, and the moral responsibility that comes with possessing ultimate military power. Krishna emphasizes that such weapons should never be used except in the most extreme circumstances, and even then, only with full understanding of their catastrophic consequences. The descriptions of nuclear-like explosions appear throughout the epic with disturbing consistency. When the Brahmastra detonates, it creates a pillar of smoke and fire that rises to touch the heavens. The explosion generates heat so intense that warriors leap into rivers to cool their burning armor, yet the water itself begins to boil. Animals and birds flee in panic, and even the sun seems to waver in the sky. The language mirrors eyewitness accounts of atomic bomb tests with accuracy that purely imaginative literature rarely achieves. Archaeological evidence from sites associated with the Mahabharata adds intriguing weight to these literary accounts. Excavations at Kurukshetra, the epic's primary battlefield, have revealed unusual glass formations that require extremely high temperatures to create, temperatures typically associated with nuclear reactions rather than conventional warfare. Similar vitrified areas appear at other ancient sites across India, suggesting exposure to heat sources that conventional Bronze Age technology couldn't generate. The radioactivity measurements taken at some of these locations show elevated levels that persist thousands of years after the supposed events. While natural explanations exist for most radioactive anomalies, the specific patterns found at certain Indian archaeological sites match signatures associated with ancient nuclear detonations rather than geological processes. These findings remain controversial, but they can't be dismissed entirely without further investigation. The epic's descriptions extend beyond simple explosive devices into what can only be called advanced weapon systems. The Indrastra apparently generates electromagnetic pulses that disable enemy equipment and communications. The Varunastra creates environmental effects resembling modern weather modification technology, summoning floods, storms, and atmospheric disturbances as tactical weapons. The Vyavastra manipulates air pressure to create devastating winds that can level fortifications and scatter armies. The delivery systems described for these weapons suggest technological sophistication that exceeds Bronze Age capabilities by several millennia. Some projectiles launch from handheld devices, others from vehicle-mounted platforms, and the most powerful from what sound like missile silos or orbital platforms. The range capabilities described weapons that can strike targets on distant continents imply either ballistic, missile technology, or space-based weapon systems. Perhaps most remarkably, The text describes countermeasures and defensive systems designed to intercept incoming weapons. Warriors deploy protective fields that can deflect certain attacks. Some defensive weapons appear to function as anti-missile systems, intercepting and destroying hostile projectiles before impact. The tactical descriptions suggest command and control systems capable of coordinating complex battle scenarios involving multiple weapons platforms and integrated defense networks. The Ramayana contains similar weapons descriptions with technical details that parallel the Mahabharata's accounts. Rama's golden arrow apparently functions as a precision-guided munition capable of pursuing evasive targets across vast distances. The weapon shows decision-making capability, choosing optimal timing for detonation and adjusting its approach to maximize effectiveness against specific target types. The environmental effects described in both epics extend far beyond immediate battlefield damage. Regions struck by certain weapons remain barren for decades or centuries. Water sources become contaminated with substances that cause wasting diseases. The very ground appears to retain dangerous properties that affect subsequent generations. These long-term consequences match patterns associated with radiological contamination more closely than any conventional ancient warfare technology. The texts also describe biological weapons that target specific genetic lines or ethnic groups. Certain arrows carry poisons that affect particular bloodlines while leaving others unharmed. The precision required for such selective biological warfare suggests advanced understanding of genetics and biochemistry that mainstream history places thousands of years in the future. The moral framework surrounding these weapons reveals sophisticated thinking about the ethics of mass destruction. The epics repeatedly emphasize that possessing such capabilities creates overwhelming responsibility. Warriors who deploy the most powerful weapons often suffer psychological trauma from witnessing the devastation they've caused. The texts suggest that knowledge of weapon construction was carefully guarded and passed only to individuals deemed capable of handling such terrible power responsibly. Modern military analysts who have studied these ancient descriptions find tactical concepts that parallel contemporary strategic thinking about nuclear warfare, electromagnetic pulse weapons, and space-based defense systems. The command structures, operational procedures, and strategic doctrines described in the epics show understanding of military principles that weren't formally developed until the 20th century. As darkness deepens over the battlefields where these ancient wars allegedly unfolded, we're confronted with questions that challenge comfortable assumptions about technological development. Were these elaborate fantasies created by poets with remarkably prescient imaginations? Were they memories of actual advanced weapons, preserved in epic form long after the technology itself had been lost or abandoned? Or do they represent something else entirely, perhaps glimpses of cyclical human development where civilizations repeatedly reach heights of destructive capability before collapsing back into simpler ages? The weapons sleep in verses now, their terrible fire contained in Sanskrit syllables. But their detailed descriptions continue to echo across millennia, reminding us that the ancients may have achieved, and perhaps deliberately abandoned, technologies that our own civilization is only beginning to rediscover in laboratories where theoretical physics meets classified military research. In the volcanic plains of Maharashtra lies a perfect circle carved from solid basalt rock, the Lonar crater, a geological mystery that has puzzled scientists since its discovery by British surveyors in 1823. This isn't the worn remnant of ancient volcanic activity or the gentle depression left by gradual erosion. It's a pristine impact crater, blasted from solid rock with such violent force that the evidence remains clearly visible 50,000 years after the event that created it. Walk to the crater's rim at sunrise, when morning light illuminates the circular lake that fills its bottom like a mirror reflecting geological time. The precision of the crater's geometry defies easy explanation. A perfect circle 1.8 kilometers in diameter, carved 150 meters deep into some of Earth's hardest rock. The impact required energies comparable to several megaton nuclear explosions. Yet no known meteorite strike explains the crater's formation or the unusual properties found within its boundaries. The rock formations surrounding Lonar display characteristics that shouldn't exist from conventional meteorite impacts in basaltic terrain. The rim materials show evidence of exposure to temperatures exceeding 1700 degrees Celsius heat levels that transform rock into glass-like substances found nowhere else in the region. Microscopic analysis reveals shocked minerals and pressure signatures, typically associated with nuclear explosions rather than simple kinetic impacts. The lake water itself presents chemical anomalies that continue to baffle researchers. Despite having no visible outlet, the water maintains alkaline properties unlike any other natural water body in India. The pH levels fluctuate seasonally in patterns that suggest ongoing chemical processes rather than simple evaporation and rainfall cycles. Microbial life in the lake includes species found nowhere else on Earth, extremophile organisms adapted to conditions that shouldn't exist in this geographical region. Local folklore preserves stories about the crater's formation that modern ears dismiss as mythology, but that contain suspiciously specific details. Village traditions speak of a great fire that fell from heaven, burning the earth so intensely that the ground melted like butter. The tales describe explosions that could be heard across distant kingdoms, followed by darkness that lasted for days as ash and smoke blocked the sun. Archaeological investigations around the crater have revealed settlement patterns that suggest human habitation both before and after the impact event. Pre-impact sites show evidence of thriving communities with sophisticated agricultural practices and advanced metallurgy. Post-impact archaeology reveals a dramatic change in settlement patterns, with populations avoiding the immediate crater region for centuries after its formation. The Mahabharata contains passages that some researchers interpret as possible references to the Lonar event. Descriptions of divine weapons, creating circular devastation in regions that match the crater's geographical location, raise intriguing questions about the relationship between ancient literature and geological reality. While mainstream scholarship dismisses such connections as coincidental, the geographical specificity deserves careful consideration. Similar anomalous sites appear throughout India, though none match Lonar's dramatic visibility. The glass formations at Rajasthan's Thar Desert show evidence of exposure to extreme heat that conventional explanations struggle to account for. The melted rock appears in patches that suggest localized rather than regional heating, as if specific areas were subjected to intense energy while surrounding regions remain untouched. The Deccan Plateau contains numerous circular formations that might represent ancient impact sites now obscured by volcanic activity and erosion. Geological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have identified subsurface structures that match impact crater signatures, suggesting the visible craters represent only a fraction of the total bombardment this region has experienced throughout geological time. Recent research has revealed that Lonar formation coincided with a period of increased cosmic activity that affected multiple regions simultaneously. Ice core data shows atmospheric disturbances consistent with major impact events around the same time period. Tree ring analysis from surviving ancient forests shows growth disruptions that suggest environmental trauma affecting large geographical areas. The crater's electromagnetic properties add another layer to its mystery. Compass readings become erratic near the crater rim. Electronic equipment experiences interference patterns that shouldn't occur in normal basaltic environments. Some researchers suggest these effects result from metallic debris buried beneath the crater floor, while others propose more exotic explanations involving altered magnetic field properties. The precision required to create such a perfectly circular crater in solid basalt challenges assumptions about natural impact processes. Computer modeling of meteorite strikes in similar geological conditions typically produces irregular craters with asymmetrical features. Lonar's geometric perfection suggests either unusual impact conditions or energy sources that don't match conventional meteorite scenarios. Comparative analysis with confirmed impact craters worldwide reveals features at Lonar that appear elsewhere only at sites associated with nuclear testing or unusual impact events. The shocked quartz formations, the specific types of glass created by extreme heat, and the metallic residues found in crater samples match signatures typically associated with artificial rather than natural explosions. The dating methods applied to Lonar samples have produced inconsistent results that complicate efforts to establish a precise formation timeline. Different analytical techniques yield ages ranging from 50,000 to several 100,000 years, suggesting either methodological problems or complex formation processes that simple impact models can't explain. The biological anomalies within the crater extend beyond the unusual microbial life in the lake waters. Plant species growing on the crater floor show genetic variations not found in the same species elsewhere in Maharashtra. These variations might result from radiation exposure, chemical contamination, or selective pressures unique to the crater environment. Government restrictions on research access to certain areas around Lonar have fueled speculation about discoveries that haven't been publicly disclosed. Military interest in the site, combined with limited academic access to specific zones, suggests the crater contains features or materials that strategic security considerations classify as sensitive information. As evening shadows lengthen across the crater's perfect circle, we're reminded that Earth's history contains chapters we haven't fully read. The Lonar crater stands as evidence that our planet has experienced events whose nature and origins remain mysterious despite decades of scientific investigation. Whether formed by cosmic bombardment, ancient technology, or geological processes we don't yet understand, it challenges comfortable assumptions about the forces that have shaped our world. The lake reflects starlight now, its alkaline waters harboring life forms that evolved in conditions found nowhere else on Earth. In its depths and along its shores, the crater preserves evidence of energies that once transformed solid rock into perfect geometric forms, energies that ancient texts may have witnessed and recorded in language that modern science is only beginning to comprehend. In the pre-dawn silence of Kerala's ancient medical colleges, students still memorize Sanskrit verses that encode humanity's oldest systematic approach to healing. The Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita contain medical knowledge that spans from basic hygiene to surgical procedures so advanced that modern medicine has only recently rediscovered equivalent techniques. But beyond conventional healing arts, these texts hint at something more ambitious, the possibility of extending human life far beyond its natural limits through understanding principles that contemporary science is only beginning to explore. Picture the operating theaters described in the Sushruta Samhita, written over 2 millennia ago. The text details surgical procedures for cataract removal, kidney stone extraction, and plastic reconstruction with precision that rivals modern medical textbooks. Sushruta describes anesthesia techniques using plant-based compounds that induce controlled unconsciousness, antiseptic procedures that prevent infection, and suturing methods that promote optimal healing with minimal scarring. The surgical instruments cataloged in ancient texts number over 100 different specialized tools, each designed for specific procedures and anatomical locations. These weren't crude knives and probes, but sophisticated implements crafted with metallurgical precision. Archaeological discoveries have confirmed that ancient Indian surgeons possessed surgical steel of exceptional quality, capable of holding edges sharp enough for delicate operations while remaining strong enough for bone work. The anatomical knowledge preserved in Ayurvedic texts demonstrates intimate familiarity with human physiology that should have been possible without systematic dissection and careful observation across generations. The descriptions of circulatory systems, nervous pathways, and organ functions match modern understanding with accuracy that suggests either remarkable intuitive insight or methodical scientific investigation that history doesn't acknowledge. But it is the life extension practices described in specialized texts like the Rasayana, Tantra that push beyond conventional medical boundaries into realms that modern science is only beginning to take seriously. These treatises describe systematic approaches to slowing aging, enhancing vitality, and extending lifespan through combinations of herbal compounds, controlled breathing techniques, and what can only be called consciousness modification practices. The mercury-based alchemical procedures detailed in various Ayurvedic texts present particular puzzles for contemporary researchers. These aren't the crude protochemistry that European alchemy represented, but sophisticated metallurgical and pharmaceutical processes that create compounds with unusual properties. Some of these preparations allegedly halt aging processes, enhance mental capacity, and grant resistance to diseases that normally prove fatal. Consider the soma preparations described throughout Vedic and post-Vedic literature. Modern researchers have identified dozens of candidate plants that might represent the legendary elixir, yet none fully match the extraordinary properties attributed to properly prepared soma. The text suggests the crucial element isn't the plant itself, but the processing technique's specific timing, environmental conditions, and consciousness states of the preparers that influence the final product's effectiveness. Diagnostic methods described in classical Ayurvedic texts demonstrate understanding of subtle physiological indicators that modern medicine has largely overlooked. Pulse diagnosis reaches levels of precision that can allegedly detect disease processes years before symptoms appear. Urine analysis techniques identify constitutional imbalances through properties that conventional testing doesn't measure. These diagnostic capabilities suggest awareness of biological information that current medical technology might be missing. The concept of Oya's vital essence that determines health, longevity, and spiritual development presents fascinating parallels to current research into cellular energy production, immune system function, and the biological markers of aging. Ayurvedic practices designed to enhance Oyas include dietary protocols, breathing exercises, and lifestyle modifications that modern anti-aging research has independently identified as life-extending interventions. The herbal pharmacology preserved in Ayurvedic texts catalogs thousands of medicinal plants with specific preparation methods that maximize therapeutic effectiveness while minimizing side effects. Many of these traditional preparations have proven more effective than isolated active compounds, suggesting ancient physicians understood synergistic principles that pharmaceutical chemistry is only beginning to appreciate. The surgical techniques described for trauma treatment, organ transplantation, and reconstructive procedures include methods that wouldn't be rediscovered in European medicine until the 20th century. The texts describe blood transfusion procedures, skin grafting techniques, and even primitive organ transplant methods that suggest medical capabilities far exceeding what Bronze Age technology should have supported. The integration of consciousness modification with physical healing represents perhaps Ayurveda's most sophisticated contribution to medical understanding. The texts describe systematic approaches to altering mental states that enhance healing processes, reduce pain sensitivity, and accelerate recovery from serious injuries. These techniques parallel current research into placebo effects, meditation's impact on immune function, and the role of consciousness in biological healing. The longevity claims associated with advanced Ayurvedic practices stretch credibility by modern standards, yet they persist with remarkable consistency across different texts and traditions. Masters allegedly achieving lifespans of several centuries appear throughout Indian historical accounts with supporting evidence that is difficult to dismiss entirely. While extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, the consistency of these reports across independent sources suggests phenomena that deserve scientific investigation rather than automatic dismissal. The lost techniques referenced in various texts hint at medical capabilities that exceeded even the sophisticated procedures that survived into recorded history. Fragmentary references describe methods for limb regeneration, organ reconstruction, and even consciousness transfer between bodies. While such claims sound like science fiction, they might represent medical knowledge that was lost during periods of cultural disruption and foreign invasion. The metallurgical knowledge required for advanced Ayurvedic preparations involves techniques for creating therapeutic compounds from metals that would normally be toxic to human physiology. These processes allegedly neutralize harmful properties while enhancing beneficial effects through controlled chemical transformations that modern chemistry struggles to replicate safely. The astronomical timing incorporated into many Ayurvedic procedures suggests understanding of cosmic influences on biological processes that contemporary chronobiology is only beginning to explore. Specific treatments are timed to celestial cycles, seasonal changes, and even daily rhythms that optimize therapeutic effectiveness through environmental synchronization. Environmental medicine principles preserved in Ayurvedic texts demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how geographical location, climate patterns, and ecological factors influence human health. These insights parallel current research into environmental toxins, climate health effects, and the biological impacts of habitat disruption. As dawn breaks over ancient healing centers that still practice traditional methods, we glimpse medical knowledge that transcends the simple herbalism that superficial understanding suggests. Ayurveda represents systematic investigation into human biology, consciousness, and longevity that achieved insights our own medical science is still struggling to validate and implement. The morning prayers in Sanskrit carry forward knowledge that might hold keys to questions. Modern medicine hasn't yet learned to ask questions about the true limits of human lifespan, the relationship between consciousness and physical health, and the possibility that our ancestors achieved medical capabilities that history has forgotten, but that cellular memory still preserves in treatments that work through mechanisms we don't yet comprehend. The stone corridors of Thanjavu's Brihadiswar temple come alive at dawn with sounds that seem to emerge from the architecture itself. As morning prayers begin, the granite walls amplify and focus acoustic energy in ways that modern sound engineers struggle to understand, creating sonic experiences that suggest the builders possessed knowledge of resonance, phenomena that goes far beyond simple architectural acoustics. Walk through the temple's inner chambers during evening prayers, when oil lamps flicker against carved pillars, and chanted Sanskrit verses create standing waves that pulse through solid stone. The acoustic properties aren't accidental. Every surface, every angle, every proportional relationship serves sonic purposes that transform ordinary sound into something approaching pure vibration. The builders designed these spaces to amplify specific frequencies while dampening others, creating acoustic environments that affect consciousness as much as hearing. The Meenakshi temple at Madurai contains musical pillars that ring with distinct tones when struck, each column tuned to specific pitches that create harmonic relationships across the entire hall. The metallurgical precision required to achieve such acoustic properties in stone suggests understanding of wave mechanics, resonance frequencies, and harmonic mathematics that shouldn't have been available to medieval architects working with traditional tools and techniques. Consider the acoustic marvel at Gal Gumbaz in Bijapur, where whispers spoken in one corner travel clearly across the vast dome to listeners 40 meters away. The sound focusing achieved through dome geometry requires mathematical precision that must account for wavelength, reflection angles, and interference patterns. Modern acoustic engineers attempting to replicate such precise sound focusing typically rely on computer modeling and electronic measurement tools, unavailable to 17th century builders. The Hampi temples demonstrate acoustic properties that extend beyond simple amplification into realms that suggest intentional manipulation of sonic energy for specific physiological and psychological effects. Certain chambers create infrasonic resonances, sound frequencies below normal hearing that can induce altered states of consciousness, trigger emotional responses, and even affect brainwave patterns in ways that modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand. Archaeological acoustic analysis has revealed that many ancient Indian temples incorporate design principles that optimize specific frequency ranges associated with meditation, healing, and altered consciousness states. The dimensions, proportions, and material choices create resonance chambers tuned to frequencies that research has identified as particularly effective for inducing therapeutic brain states and enhanced awareness. The Ellora and Ajanta cave temples carved from solid rock demonstrate acoustic engineering on a scale that challenges assumptions about ancient capabilities. These aren't natural caves modified for habitation, but precisely engineered acoustic spaces carved with understanding of how sound behaves in enclosed volumes. The positioning of Buddhist statues in relief carvings takes advantage of reflection and focusing effects that create optimal listening positions for different types of auditory experiences. The mathematical relationships underlying temple acoustics reveal sophisticated understanding of harmonic principles that parallel concepts in quantum mechanics and wave physics. The proportional systems governing temple architecture incorporate golden ratios, Fibonacci sequences, and geometric relationships that optimize resonance characteristics in ways that suggest knowledge of fundamental physical principles that mainstream history doesn't credit to ancient builders. The integration of acoustic properties with astronomical alignments adds another layer of complexity to temple engineering. Many temples are oriented to capture and focus sound waves during specific celestial events times when atmospheric conditions, solar radiation, and cosmic ray activity create optimal environments for acoustic phenomena. This suggests the builders understood relationships between cosmic cycles and terrestrial sound transmission that modern physics is only beginning to explore. The materials used in temple construction show evidence of intentional selection for acoustic properties rather than simple availability or aesthetic preferences. Specific types of granite, particular metal alloys, and even the composition of mortar were chosen to optimize sound transmission and resonance characteristics. The metallurgy of temple bells and instruments demonstrates understanding of acoustic properties in metal casting that rivals modern foundry techniques. The treatment of surfaces within acoustic temples reveals knowledge of how texture, pattern, and geometric relief affect sound reflection and absorption. The intricate carvings that cover temple walls aren't purely decorative, but serve acoustic functions, breaking up unwanted reflections, creating focusing surfaces, and establishing interference patterns that enhance desired acoustic effects while minimizing sonic distortion. Recent research using electronic acoustic analysis has discovered that many temples generate standing wave patterns that create zones of acoustic enhancement and suppression throughout their interiors. These patterns suggest the builders could predict and control how sound would behave in complex three-dimensional spaces, positioning architectural elements to create optimal acoustic environments for specific ritual activities. The therapeutic applications of temple acoustics extend beyond spiritual practices into realms that modern sound therapy is rediscovering. Specific chambers create frequency environments that promote healing, reduce stress, and enhance immune function through mechanisms that operate below conscious awareness. The builders apparently understood how particular sound frequencies affect human physiology at cellular levels. The preservation of acoustic knowledge in oral traditions demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how sound transmission works across generations. Master builders passed down acoustic secrets through apprenticeship systems that emphasized practical experience with resonance phenomena, harmonic relationships, and the therapeutic applications of controlled sound environments. The instrumental acoustics incorporated into temple design include permanent installations that create complex sonic environments without requiring human performers, wind chambers that generate tones through atmospheric pressure changes, water features that create specific rhythmic patterns, and architectural elements that respond to environmental conditions with predictable acoustic effects. The psychological effects of temple acoustics suggest the builders understood how controlled sound environments influence consciousness, emotional states, and cognitive function. The acoustic properties create immersive experiences that facilitate meditation, enhance memory retention, and promote mental states associated with heightened awareness and spiritual insight. The electromagnetic properties discovered at some acoustically sophisticated temples raise questions about possible connections between sound waves and electromagnetic field generation. Certain temples show unusual electromagnetic signatures that correlate with their acoustic properties, suggesting the builders might have understood relationships between different types of wave phenomena. As evening settles over temples throughout India, the daily acoustic rituals continue traditions that encode knowledge about sound, resonance, and consciousness that modern science is still struggling to comprehend. The stone walls hold acoustic secrets in their precise proportions, their carefully calculated angles, and their mysteriously effective ability to transform ordinary sound into transcendent sonic experiences. The temple bells ring across the landscape, their tones carrying through architecture designed to amplify and focus sound, energy with precision that suggests ancient understanding of acoustic principles that our own technology is only beginning to match. In their resonant chambers, we hear echoes of knowledge that might reveal how consciousness itself resonates with the fundamental frequencies that organize matter and energy throughout the cosmos. In the shadowed chambers of Emperor Ashoka's palace at Pataliputra, a decision was made that would echo across millennia: the establishment of history's most enigmatic secret society, the 9 Unknown Men. This wasn't the paranoid fiction of modern conspiracy theorists, but a documented historical initiative born from imperial wisdom that recognized how dangerous knowledge could either elevate humanity or destroy it entirely. Picture the scene around 270 BCE as Ashoka contemplated the aftermath of the Kalinga War. The carnage had been so complete, so devastating in its scope, that the emperor experienced what can only be called civilizational trauma. The military technologies that had secured his victories, advanced metallurgy, sophisticated logistics, and weapons that exceeded anything his enemies possessed, had demonstrated humanity's capacity for destruction on scales that haunted the imperial conscience. The emperor's solution was unprecedented in its scope and ambition. Rather than destroying dangerous knowledge or hoarding it within imperial circles, Ashoka chose a different path: preservation under absolute secrecy. 9 individuals, each a master of different scientific domains, would be entrusted with humanity's most advanced knowledge. Their mission: to develop these sciences further while ensuring they never again unleashed catastrophic destruction upon the world. Each of the 9 unknown men received responsibility for a specific branch of knowledge too dangerous for general circulation. The first studied propaganda and psychological manipulation, understanding how human consciousness could be influenced, controlled, and directed through techniques that modern political science and advertising have independently rediscovered. The second investigated physiology and anatomy, developing healing arts and life extension practices that pushed beyond conventional medical boundaries. The third member focused on microbiology and biotechnology, exploring the microscopic realms of life that wouldn't be officially discovered until the development of modern microscopy. The fourth pursued alchemy and metallurgy, seeking to understand matter's fundamental properties and the possibility of transmuting elements through controlled chemical processes. The fifth specialized in communication technologies, developing methods for transmitting information across vast distances without conventional messengers or signals. The sixth unknown man studied gravity and levitation, investigating the possibility of controlling gravitational forces for transportation and construction applications. The seventh explored cosmology and time, mapping the universe's structure and potentially developing technologies for manipulating temporal flow itself. The eighth investigated light and radiation, studying electromagnetic phenomena and their applications for both beneficial and destructive purposes. The ninth and most mysterious member served as coordinator and guardian of the others' work, ensuring that no single individual could reconstruct a complete knowledge base without cooperation from all members. This fail-safe system prevented any single person from wielding ultimate technological power while maintaining the continuity of accumulated wisdom across generations. The historical evidence for this organization comes from sources that skeptics find difficult to dismiss entirely. Ancient Roman historians mention mysterious Indian advisors who possessed uncanny knowledge of advanced technologies. Chinese diplomatic records describe Indian scholars with capabilities that seem to transcend normal human limitations. Islamic scholars during medieval periods reference Hindu scientists whose achievements in mathematics, astronomy, and chemistry exceeded contemporary understanding. The alleged discoveries attributed to the 9 unknown men read like science fiction, but appear in historical accounts with consistency. That suggests actual technological achievements. Anti-gravity devices that could lift massive stones without mechanical assistance. Communication systems that transmitted messages instantly across continental distances. Metallurgical processes that created alloys with properties that modern material science can barely match. The biotechnology allegedly developed within this secret network included life extension techniques, disease prevention methods, and biological enhancement procedures that promise to extend human capabilities far beyond natural limits. Some accounts describe the ability to slow aging processes, enhance mental capacity, and even transfer consciousness between different physical bodies. The most controversial claims involve temporal manipulation technologies that could allegedly slow, accelerate, or even reverse the flow of time within localized regions. While such capabilities seem impossible by current scientific understanding, quantum mechanics has revealed time as malleable nature in ways that make ancient claims less automatically dismissible than previous generations assumed. The organizational structure maintained absolute secrecy through compartmentalization, coded communication, and succession planning that ensured knowledge transfer across generations without external detection. Members were replaced upon death or retirement by carefully selected individuals who underwent extensive preparation before receiving access to their designated knowledge domains. The influence of this secret organization allegedly extended throughout Indian history, with members serving as invisible advisors to rulers, scientists, and spiritual teachers across centuries. The advanced mathematical concepts that emerged from Indian scholarship, the sophisticated astronomical observations recorded in various texts, and the metallurgical achievements that produced rust-proof iron and Damascus steel might represent controlled releases of knowledge from this hidden scientific establishment. Modern researchers investigating the 9 unknown men encounter documentary evidence that is difficult to authenticate, but equally difficult to dismiss. References appear in texts separated by centuries and geographical regions, suggesting either a persistent historical reality or an unusually consistent mythological tradition. The technical accuracy of some attributed discoveries exceeds what historical context should have, supported through conventional development. The alleged modern connections to this ancient organization fuel contemporary speculation about scientific breakthroughs that seem to emerge from nowhere, technological developments that leap ahead of apparent research progression, and innovations that suggest access to knowledge bases not reflected in published scientific literature. As night deepens over the ruins of ancient Pataliputra, we re-left contemplating the possibility that humanity's most advanced knowledge has been carefully guarded by invisible guardians across millennia. Whether historical reality or persistent legend, the 9 unknown men represent the recognition that knowledge itself can be too powerful for unrestricted distribution, a wisdom that our own nuclear age has learned through potentially catastrophic experience. The shadows hold their secrets still, and somewhere in the accumulated silence of centuries, the possibility remains that ancient wisdom continues its patient watch over human destiny, preserved by guardians whose names history will never know, but whose influence might shape the future in ways we can barely imagine. Under the star-scattered dome of night above Ujjain, ancient astronomers once tracked celestial movements with precision that modern space agencies struggle to surpass. The mathematical legacy of these forgotten sky watchers survives in texts that calculate planetary positions, predict eclipses, and map cosmic cycles with accuracy that shouldn't have been achievable without telescopic observation and electronic computation. Picture Aryabhata working by oil lamp in 5th century Kusamapura, calculating the Earth's circumference to within less than 1% of the true value. His mathematical methods treated our planet as a rotating sphere orbiting the sun, concepts that European astronomy wouldn't accept for another 1,000 years. Yet Aryabhata achieved his insights using observational data collected with naked eye precision and mathematical techniques that modern astronomers recognize as fundamentally correct. The Surya Siddhanta, composed around the 4th century, contains astronomical calculations that demonstrate knowledge of planetary orbital mechanics, precession of equinoxes, and gravitational effects that Newtonian physics would later formalize through calculus and telescopic observation. The text calculates the solar year length as 365.2587564 days, a precision that differs from modern measurements by less than 2 minutes annually. Walk through the stone observatories of Jantar Mantar at Jaipur and Delhi, where 18th century instruments built on ancient principles still track celestial movements with remarkable accuracy. These aren't primitive stone circles, but sophisticated analog computers designed to perform complex astronomical calculations through precise geometric relationships. The Samrit Yantra sundial at Delhi can measure time to within 20-second accuracy using shadow positions that require mathematical understanding, OF spherical trigonometry, and celestial mechanics. The architecture of these observatories reveals knowledge that extends beyond simple timekeeping into realms of cosmic observation that suggest awareness of astronomical phenomena invisible to casual skywatchers. Instruments designed to track stellar proper motion, measure parallax shifts, and detect planetary retrograde motion demonstrate systematic observation programs that must have continued across multiple generations to accumulate sufficient data for meaningful analysis. Consider the mathematical sophistication required for calculations preserved in texts like Brahmagupta's Brahma's Futus didn't. The algorithms for computing planetary positions, eclipse timing, and seasonal variations employ mathematical techniques that wouldn't be developed in European astronomy until the Renaissance. The use of zero, negative numbers, and algebraic methods in astronomical calculations represents mathematical innovation that enabled computational precision impossible through Roman numeral systems. The observational accuracy achieved by ancient Indian astronomers challenges assumptions about what naked eye observation could accomplish. Eclipse predictions calculated using medieval Indian methods prove accurate to within minutes across centuries of verification. Stellar position catalogs show awareness of proper motion and coordinate precession that requires systematic observation across multiple generations. Planetary ephemeris calculations match actual celestial mechanics with precision that suggests access to observational data spanning extensive time periods. The integration of astronomy with architecture throughout ancient India reveals systematic application of celestial knowledge to terrestrial construction projects. Temple orientations align with specific stellar rising points, seasonal solar positions, and lunar cycle markers that optimize astronomical observation while serving religious and social functions. The precision required for such alignments demands mathematical capability that extends far beyond practical construction needs. The timekeeping systems developed by ancient Indian astronomers demonstrate understanding of multiple cosmic cycles operating simultaneously: daily rotation, monthly lunar phases, annual solar movement, and longer-term planetary cycles that create complex rhythmic patterns across decades and centuries. The calendrical calculations required to track these overlapping cycles employs mathematical techniques that modern computer algorithms use for similar astronomical calculations. The metallurgy required for precision astronomical instruments reveals advanced understanding of materials science applied to scientific measurement. Bronze astrolabes show alloy compositions optimized for dimensional stability across temperature variations. The casting techniques achieve mechanical precision that allows accurate angular measurements using handheld devices. The surface treatments prevent corrosion and maintain calibration accuracy across extended usage periods. The documentation methods used to preserve astronomical observations demonstrate systematic scientific methodology that ensured data continuity across political changes and cultural disruptions. Observational records maintained consistent formatting, coordinate systems, and measurement standards that allowed astronomical knowledge to accumulate across generations of skywatchers working in different regions and time periods. The geographical accuracy of ancient Indian maps, based on astronomical surveying techniques, reveals practical applications of celestial knowledge for terrestrial navigation and territorial mapping. The coordinate systems used for geographical positioning employ astronomical reference points that achieve accuracy comparable to GPS positioning for regional mapping applications. The mathematical tools developed for astronomical calculations contributed to advances in algebra, trigonometry, and numerical methods that wouldn't appear in European mathematics for centuries. The computational techniques for calculating square roots, solving indeterminate equations, and manipulating infinite series emerged from practical needs for astronomical precision that pushed mathematical development beyond purely theoretical considerations. The cosmic models preserved in ancient texts demonstrate awareness of astronomical scales and time periods that extend far beyond human experience into realms of geological and cosmological time. The calculations for planetary periods, stellar cycles, and cosmic ages employ numerical concepts that parallel modern understanding of deep time and cosmic evolution. The prediction capabilities achieved through ancient astronomical methods enabled practical applications that demonstrate the reliability and accuracy of underlying mathematical models. Agricultural timing, seasonal planning, and navigation applications based on astronomical calculations prove effective across geographical regions and extended time periods. The philosophical implications of ancient astronomical knowledge suggest awareness of humanity's subposition within cosmic systems that operate according to mathematical principles discoverable through systematic observation and calculation. The integration of astronomical knowledge with spiritual and philosophical traditions reveals sophisticated understanding of the relationships between cosmic patterns and terrestrial existence. As dawn approaches over observatories that still function after centuries of continuous operation, we glimpse the dedication and precision that enabled ancient astronomers to achieve computational accuracy that modern technology has only recently matched. Their mathematical methods continue to yield correct results. Their observational techniques still provide reliable data, and their understanding of cosmic mechanics remains fundamentally sound despite the passage of millennia. The stars wheel overhead in patterns, these ancient sky watchers mapped with mathematical precision. That speaks to human capability for systematic investigation and accurate measurement that transcends technological limitations through patient observation, careful calculation, and mathematical insight that reveals the underlying order governing celestial motion throughout the cosmos. In the cosmic mathematics of Hindu chronology, human history represents barely a footnote in cycles so vast that Western thought could accept their possibility until geology forced recognition of deep time. The Puranic texts describe temporal scales that span millions and billions of years, kalpas and yugas that suggest ancient. Indian thinkers somehow grasped the immense age of Earth and universe long before scientific evidence confirmed what mythology had, preserved in numerical precision. Picture the scene described in the Bhagavata Purana as Brahma awakens to begin another day of cosmic creation. One day in the Creator's existence equals 4.32 billion. Human years, a figure that modern cosmology recognizes as remarkably close to Earth's actual age. This was a poetic metaphor, but mathematical calculation embedded in religious texts that treated cosmic time with numerical precision that wouldn't be matched in Western thought until the development of geological dating techniques. The Yuga system describes recurring cycles of civilizational rise and decline that operate across hundreds of thousands of years. The Satya Yuga represents a golden age when humanity possessed advanced knowledge and lived in harmony with natural law. The Treta Yuga marks gradual decline as knowledge becomes fragmented and social order deteriorates. The Dvapara Yuga continues the descent toward ignorance and conflict. The Kali Yuga represents the final age of darkness when humanity loses touch with higher knowledge and technology degenerates toward primitive levels. Consider the implications of this cyclical model for understanding ancient achievements that exceed historical expectations. If human civilization has passed through multiple cycles of advancement and decline, then archaeological anomalies, sophisticated technologies appearing without apparent developmental progression might represent recovery of knowledge from previous cycles rather than impossible anachronisms. The mathematical precision of Yuga calculations suggests systematic observation of long-term patterns that require data collection across periods far exceeding individual human lifespans. The numbers employed periods of 432,000 years for Kali Yuga, 864,000 for Dvapara, 1,296,000 for Treta, and 1,728,000 for Satya follow mathematical relationships that create predictable patterns when extended across multiple cosmic cycles. The astronomical correlations embedded within Yuga chronology demonstrate awareness of celestial mechanics operating on timescales that dwarf human historical experience. The precession of equinoxes, planetary orbital relationships, and stellar proper motion create cyclical patterns that become apparent only through observation programs spanning millennia. Ancient texts accurately calculate these cosmic rhythms in ways that suggest systematic astronomical programs operating across extended time periods. The geological implications of cyclical time concepts align surprisingly well with what Earth scientists have discovered about planetary history. The texts describe periodic cataclysms that reshape civilizations' massive floods, climate shifts, and crustal disruptions that force humanity to rebuild from scattered survivors. These descriptions match geological evidence for periodic mass extinctions, ice age cycles, and volcanic episodes that have repeatedly stressed terrestrial life throughout planetary history. The technological progression described across Yuga cycles suggests understanding of how human capabilities develop, peak, and decline in response to environmental and social pressures. The Satya Yuga texts describe technologies that sound remarkably like idealized versions of capabilities. Our own civilization is struggling to achieve clean energy, consciousness-based communication, and harmony between technological development and ecological balance. The knowledge preservation methods described in various texts reveal systematic approaches to maintaining information across civilizational collapse periods. Sacred texts encoded in multiple formats, architectural monuments that survive natural disasters, and oral traditions that maintain accuracy across generations represent strategies for ensuring crucial knowledge survives. Periodic dark ages that cyclical models predict. The recovery mechanisms described for emerging from Kali Yuga darkness suggest understanding of how civilizations can rebuild advanced capabilities using knowledge fragments preserved from previous cycles. The texts describe rediscovery processes, gradual technological reconstruction, and social reorganization that parallels historical examples of civilizations, recovering from collapse through preserved knowledge and systematic reconstruction efforts. The consciousness evolution concepts integrated with cyclical time suggest awareness that human mental capabilities themselves fluctuate across cosmic cycles. The texts describe periods when human consciousness naturally tends toward higher awareness and other periods when mental capabilities become limited and fragmented. These fluctuations allegedly affect both individual potential and collective civilizational achievement. The environmental correlations embedded in Yuga descriptions demonstrate understanding of how cosmic cycles influence terrestrial conditions through mechanisms that affect climate patterns, geological stability, and biological evolution. The texts describe how astronomical alignments, solar radiation cycles, and cosmic ray variations create environmental changes that either support or stress advanced civilizations. The social organization patterns described across different yugas reveal understanding of how human societies develop, mature, and decay in response to both internal dynamics and external pressures. The descriptions suggest that advanced technological capabilities require corresponding social evolution, and that technological decline often accompanies social fragmentation and loss of cooperative organization. The spiritual dimensions of cyclical time concepts suggest that consciousness itself participates in cosmic rhythms that affect both individual development and collective human potential. The texts describe how cosmic cycles influence human spiritual capabilities, creating periods when transcendent awareness becomes more accessible and other periods when consciousness becomes limited to material concerns. The predictive aspects of Yuga chronology suggest the ancient calculators believed they could forecast future developments based on cyclical patterns observed across multiple previous cycles. Some calculations place current human civilization in the early stages of Kali Yuga, predicting continued technological and social decline before eventual renewal begins another ascending cycle. The scientific parallels to cyclical cosmology appear in modern discoveries about cosmic evolution, stellar life cycles, and galactic rotation periods that create environmental changes affecting planetary conditions across timescales comparable to Yuga calculations. Contemporary astronomy has revealed that solar system movement through galactic regions creates periodic environmental changes that could influence terrestrial evolution across millions of years. As we contemplate the vast reaches of cosmic time stretching behind and ahead of our brief historical moment, the ancient chronologists remind us that human civilization might represent recurring phenomenon rather than unique evolutionary achievement. The mathematical precision of their calculations suggests systematic understanding of cosmic patterns that operate across timescales that make human history appear as momentary fluctuation in cycles that dwarf individual comprehension. The concept challenges linear assumptions about progress and development, suggesting instead that human achievement follows rhythmic patterns of rise and decline that operate according to discoverable mathematical principles. In this perspective, our current technological capabilities might represent recovery of knowledge that previous cycles achieved and lost, preserved in mythological memory until circumstances permit rediscovery and practical application once again. The thunder of artillery echoes across the battlefields of 18th century India as we witness technology that should iron-cased rockets soaring through smoke-filled skies with precision that European military engineers could and achieve for another century. These aren't crude fireworks or simple incendiary devices, but sophisticated guided missiles developed in the workshops of Mysore under Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan, representing military innovation that was centuries ahead of its time. Picture the scene at Seringapatam in 1799 as British forces encounter rocket technology that defies their understanding of possible military capabilities. The Mysorean rockets launch from portable platforms, travel distances exceeding 2 kilometers with remarkable accuracy, and carry payloads that can penetrate armor and fortifications with devastating effectiveness. The British military observers document these weapons with mixture of professional admiration and strategic alarm. The technical specifications recorded by British engineers reveal sophisticated metallurgy, and propulsion engineering that European military science wouldn't match until the Industrial Revolution. The rocket cases were forged from high-quality iron using techniques that created seamless pressure vessels capable of withstanding internal combustion, forces that would destroy cruder casings. The metallurgical knowledge required for such construction exceeded contemporary European capabilities by significant margins. The propellant chemistry employed in these rockets demonstrates advanced understanding of combustion dynamics, chemical mixing ratios, and controlled burn rates that optimize thrust generation while maintaining directional stability. The fuel compositions included carefully balanced mixtures of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal with additional compounds that enhanced performance characteristics in ways that military chemists of the period couldn't immediately comprehend or replicate. The guidance systems incorporated into Mysorean rocket design reveal mechanical engineering sophistication that anticipated developments in ballistic technology by decades. Some rockets employed primitive gyroscopic stabilization. Others used aerodynamic fins positioned to maintain trajectory accuracy, and the most advanced models incorporated what can only be described as early targeting mechanisms that adjusted flight paths to compensate for wind resistance and gravitational drop. The manufacturing infrastructure required to produce these weapons in military quantities suggests industrial capabilities that historians struggle to account for using conventional assumptions about 18th century Indian technology. The workshops at Seringapatam employed production techniques that created standardized components, quality control systems, and output volumes that supported sustained military campaigns against technologically superior European forces. The tactical deployment of rocket artillery in Mysorean military strategy reveals understanding of combined arms warfare, concepts that wouldn't be formally developed in European military doctrine for another generation. Rocket units coordinated with conventional infantry and cavalry to create integrated battle plans that maximize the psychological and physical impact of these revolutionary weapons against enemies unprepared for such technological capabilities. The knowledge transfer that brought rocket technology to Europe represents one of history's most significant military intelligence acquisitions. British engineers studying captured Mysorean rockets reverse-engineered the designs and adapted the principles for European production, eventually developing the Congreve rockets that would dominate early 19th century military technology and influence ballistic development through the modern era. The historical documentation reveals that Mysorean rocket technology didn't emerge from nowhere, but represented refinement and improvement of techniques that had existed in Indian military engineering for centuries. References to rocket weapons appear in earlier Indian texts, suggesting continuous development programs that gradually enhanced performance characteristics through systematic experimentation and practical battlefield experience. The question remains, where did the foundational knowledge originate? The metallurgical techniques, chemical understanding, and mechanical engineering principles required for effective rocket construction exceed what conventional historical progression suggests should have been available in medieval India. This technological sophistication might represent recovery and application of knowledge preserved from earlier periods when Indian civilization achieved higher levels of technical capability. The preservation of rocket manufacturing knowledge through traditional apprenticeship systems demonstrates how advanced technical information could survive political upheavals and cultural changes that disrupted other forms of knowledge transmission. Master artisans passed down chemical formulations, metallurgical techniques, and mechanical engineering principles through hands-on training programs that maintained technical precision across generations. The regional concentration of rocket technology in Mysore suggests either local innovation of exceptional brilliance or access to knowledge repositories that weren't available in other parts of India during the same period. The rapid development and deployment of advanced rocket systems implies either remarkable individual genius or systematic application of preserved technical knowledge to military requirements. The European adaptation of Indian rocket technology acknowledges technological transfer that contradicts comfortable assumptions about the direction of innovation during the colonial period. Rather than representing European superiority, imposing advanced technology on primitive societies, the Mysorean rockets demonstrate Indian technical capabilities that European military engineering had to learn, copy, and gradually improve through industrial methods. The strategic impact of these weapons extends beyond immediate military applications to influence the broader development of ballistic technology, space exploration, and modern rocketry. The fundamental principles demonstrated in Mysorean rockets' controlled combustion, trajectory guidance, and payload delivery established technical foundations that 20th century rocket engineers would recognize as anticipating their own advanced developments. As evening falls over the ruins of Seringapatam, we're reminded that technological innovation doesn't always follow predictable geographical or chronological patterns. The Mysorean rockets represent achievement that emerged from Indian technical traditions to challenge European military superiority and eventually contribute to technological developments that would reshape warfare and space exploration across subsequent centuries. The rocket fragments preserved in military museums worldwide carry testimony to Indian engineering excellence that anticipated modern ballistic technology by generations. In their metal casings and chemical residues, we glimpse technical knowledge that transcended the limitations of its historical period to achieve capabilities that contemporary observers could barely comprehend and later generations would struggle to match through industrial development programs. Beneath the waters off Gujarat's coast, marine archaeology has revealed stone structures that challenge comfortable assumptions about ancient Indian civilization and the mythological status of Krishna as legendary capital. The submerged ruins of Dwarka emerge from underwater surveys as systematic urban planning, sophisticated architecture, and construction techniques that suggest the epic descriptions of this fabulous city might preserve genuine historical memory rather than pure mythological invention. Picture the scene as described in the Mahabharata, when Dwarka sank beneath the waves after Krishna's departure from earthly existence. The text describes a great city built on an island, connected to the mainland by bridges and causeways, featuring palaces that rose from the sea like crystalline mountains and harbors that accommodated vessels from distant kingdoms. The geological evidence now suggests such a city actually existed and was indeed claimed by rising waters in circumstances that match the epic account. The underwater archaeology conducted by marine scientists reveals structural remains that extend across several square kilometers of seafloor. The ruins show evidence of planned urban development, with streets laid out in geometric patterns, residential complexes arranged in organized districts, and public buildings positioned according to systematic architectural principles. The construction techniques employed massive stone blocks fitted with precision that suggests advanced engineering capabilities. The dating evidence from submerged structures indicates construction periods that align remarkably well with the chronology suggested by traditional accounts of Dwarka's history. Radiocarbon analysis of organic materials trapped within the ruins yields dates ranging from 3,500 to 1,500 BCE, placing the city as active period within timeframes that Puranic chronology assigns to Krishna's lifetime and the events described in the Mahabharata. The architectural sophistication revealed through underwater survey challenges assumptions about Bronze Age urban planning capabilities. The ruins show evidence of multi-story construction, complex drainage systems, and architectural features that required advanced understanding of hydraulic engineering, load-bearing calculations, and construction techniques that could withstand both seismic activity and marine environmental pressures. The harbor installations discovered beneath the waves demonstrate maritime engineering that rivals ancient Mediterranean port cities. The submerged docks show evidence of sophisticated mooring systems, breakwater construction, and tidal management techniques that could accommodate large vessels engaged in long-distance trade. The positioning and orientation of these facilities suggest knowledge of coastal engineering principles that optimized harbor functionality for prevailing wind and current patterns. The metallurgical evidence recovered from the underwater site includes bronze and copper artifacts that display alloy, compositions and manufacturing techniques consistent with advanced metalworking capabilities. Some recovered objects show evidence of sophisticated casting methods, precision tooling, and decorative techniques that exceeded contemporary capabilities in other regions during comparable time periods. The urban planning principles evident in Dwarka's layout reveal systematic city design that integrated residential, commercial, administrative, and religious functions according to sophisticated organizational concepts. The street patterns, building relationships, and infrastructure distribution suggest comprehensive master planning that coordinated multiple construction phases across extended time periods while maintaining architectural coherence and functional efficiency. The submergence mechanism that claimed ancient Dwarka corresponds to geological processes that affected coastal regions throughout the Arabian Sea during post-glacial sea level changes. The rising waters that claimed the ancient city represent natural phenomena rather than supernatural intervention. Yet the timing and rapidity of submergence align with traditional accounts in ways that suggest the epic descriptions preserve accurate environmental observations. The discovery of human artifacts throughout the submerged ruins confirms sustained habitation rather than temporary settlement or ceremonial use. Household items, tools, ornamental objects, and structural elements demonstrate continuous urban occupation across centuries, supporting claims that Dwarka functioned as a major metropolitan center rather than a symbolic or mythological construct. The comparative analysis with other ancient port cities reveals architectural and engineering features that place Dwarka among the most sophisticated urban centers of its era. The construction techniques, urban organization, and infrastructure development parallel achievements in contemporary civilizations while displaying distinctive characteristics that suggest independent technological development adapted to local environmental conditions. The preservation of Dwarka's urban plan beneath protective marine sediments has maintained structural details that terrestrial, archaeological sites typically lose to weathering, erosion, and subsequent construction. The underwater environment has created unique preservation conditions that allow detailed analysis of ancient construction techniques, architectural relationships, and urban organization patterns. The textual correlations between archaeological findings and literary descriptions demonstrate remarkable consistency between physical evidence and traditional accounts. The Mahabharata's descriptions of Dwarka's layout, architectural features, and geographical setting match archaeological discoveries with accuracy that suggests the epic preserves genuine historical memory rather than purely imaginative construction. The regional archaeological context supports Dwarka's historical existence within broader patterns of ancient Indian urban development. Contemporary sites throughout Gujarat show evidence of sophisticated civilization capable of supporting major metropolitan centers with advanced architecture, extensive trade networks, and technological capabilities that could have produced a city matching Dwarka's described magnificence. The marine ecological evidence reveals environmental changes that affected the entire regional coastline during the period when Dwarka allegedly flourished and then eventually succumbed to rising seas. The ecological transitions documented through core samples and marine deposits confirm substantial environmental changes that would have dramatically affected coastal settlements throughout the region. The continuing discoveries emerging from systematic underwater archaeology suggest that current findings represent only preliminary glimpses of what might be one of the ancient world's most significant urban centers. Future marine archaeological investigations could reveal additional districts, monumental architecture, and cultural artifacts that further confirm the historical reality behind one of India's most celebrated mythological cities. As moonlight illuminates the waves above Dwarka's submerged streets, we contemplate the possibility that other legendary cities might await rediscovery beneath waters that have concealed architectural marvels for millennia. The stone foundations rest in marine silence, holding secrets about ancient Indian civilization that challenge the boundary between mythology and historical reality, between epic imagination and archaeological fact. The underwater ruins continue their patient wait beneath protective waters, preserving evidence of urban achievement that survived long enough to inspire epic poetry before succumbing to geological forces that buried truth beneath layers of sediment and skepticism until modern technology could dive deep enough to rediscover. Krishna's capital resting on the seafloor like a crystallized memory of ancient Indian greatness. In the manuscript libraries of Kerala, where monsoon humidity threatens ancient palm leaves with eternal decay, mathematical treatises survive that contain concepts so advanced they would and be rediscovered in European mathematics until the age of Newton and Leibniz. These aren't simple arithmetic exercises or practical calculation methods, but sophisticated investigations into infinite series, calculus-like procedures, and numerical concepts that suggest Indian mathematicians achieved insights into mathematical infinity that anticipated modern mathematical development by over a millennium. Picture Madhava of Sangamagrama working by oil lamp in 14th century Kerala, developing infinite series expansions for trigonometric functions that European mathematicians would struggle to achieve 3 centuries later. His mathematical investigations treated infinity not as philosophical abstraction, but as practical computational tool, creating algorithms that could calculate pi to unprecedented precision using methods that modern computer programs still employ for high-accuracy mathematical calculations. The concept of zero, emerging from Indian mathematical tradition around the 5th century, represents more than simple notational convenience. It embodies understanding of mathematical nothingness that enables advanced algebraic manipulation, positional number systems, and computational techniques that remain fundamental to all subsequent mathematical development. This wasn't mere accounting innovation, but philosophical and practical breakthrough that transformed mathematical capability throughout human civilization. Consider Brahmagupta's 7th century investigations into negative numbers, quadratic equations, and algebraic methods that European mathematicians wouldn't accept for another 1,000 years. His computational techniques for solving indeterminate equations, calculating square roots, and manipulating algebraic expressions demonstrate mathematical sophistication that required conceptual frameworks far exceeding practical commercial or administrative requirements. The Kerala school's development of calculus-like techniques for infinite series analysis, function approximation, and limiting processes anticipates differential and integral calculus by several centuries. Nilakantha's commentaries describe computational methods for calculating trigonometric values, astronomical positions, and geometric relationships using mathematical procedures that modern calculus textbooks would recognize as fundamentally correct applications of advanced mathematical principles. The Bakshali manuscript, dating potentially to the 3rd or 4th century, contains mathematical methods that treat irrational numbers, algebraic notation, and computational algorithms with sophistication that suggests systematic mathematical research programs operating across generations. The techniques preserved in fragmentary form hint at comprehensive mathematical systems that achieved results through methods whose theoretical foundations wouldn't be formally established until modern mathematical analysis. The astronomical mathematics developed for calendar calculations, eclipse predictions, and planetary motion analysis required computational precision that pushed Indian mathematicians toward mathematical concepts that transcend practical observational needs. The infinite series used for trigonometric calculations, the algebraic methods for solving complex equations, and the geometric techniques for celestial mapping demonstrate mathematical capability that exceeded immediate practical requirements. The philosophical implications of Indian mathematical infinity concepts appear in texts that treat mathematical relationships as reflections of cosmic principles governing universal organization. The integration of mathematical investigation with metaphysical speculation suggests understanding that mathematical patterns reveal fundamental structures, underlying physical reality insights that modern mathematical physics has confirmed through quantum mechanics and relativity theory. The combinatorial mathematics developed for prosody analysis, linguistic investigation, and logical systems reveal systematic exploration of mathematical relationships that arise from pattern analysis and structural organization. Pingala's binary number system, developed for analyzing Sanskrit meter patterns, anticipates computational mathematics by over 2 millennia, while demonstrating mathematical thinking that transcends immediate practical applications. The geometric investigations preserved in Sulba Sutras demonstrate understanding of mathematical relationships that exceed simple construction requirements for fire altars and architectural projects. The geometric techniques for square root approximation, area calculation, and proportional relationships suggest mathematical research that pursued precision and theoretical understanding beyond practical necessity. The algebraic methods developed by medieval Indian mathematicians for solving polynomial equations, manipulating symbolic expressions, and investigating number theoretical relationships demonstrate mathematical capabilities that European algebra wouldn't achieve until Renaissance developments. The systematic approach to algebraic manipulation suggests comprehensive mathematical frameworks that treated abstract symbolic reasoning as legitimate mathematical investigation. The infinite series investigations conducted in Kerala reveal mathematical thinking that anticipates modern analysis through understanding of convergence properties, approximation techniques, and limiting processes that enable precise calculation of transcendental functions. These mathematical achievements represent original research rather than practical adaptation of existing techniques, suggesting creative mathematical investigation of the highest caliber. The integration of mathematical development with astronomical observation demonstrates practical applications of advanced mathematical concepts that validated theoretical insights through empirical verification. The mathematical methods developed for astronomical calculation prove their accuracy through successful prediction of celestial events, establishing mathematical credibility that encouraged further theoretical development. The preservation of mathematical knowledge through traditional educational systems maintained computational accuracy and theoretical understanding across centuries of political disruption and cultural change. The Guru Shishya tradition ensured that mathematical methods, theoretical insights, and computational techniques survived to influence subsequent mathematical development throughout Indian intellectual history. The transmission of Indian mathematical concepts to Islamic and European mathematical traditions influenced global mathematical development in ways that shaped the foundations of modern mathematical analysis. The Indian innovations in algebra, trigonometry, and numerical analysis provided crucial building blocks for subsequent mathematical achievements throughout world civilization. As dawn breaks over libraries where mathematical manuscripts still reveal theoretical insights that anticipate contemporary mathematical research, we recognize that mathematical discovery doesn't follow predictable geographical or chronological patterns. The Indian investigations into mathematical infinity demonstrate human mathematical capability that transcended immediate practical requirements to achieve theoretical understanding that modern mathematics continues to build upon and extend. The mathematical concepts developed in ancient and medieval India established foundations for computational methods, theoretical frameworks, and conceptual approaches that remain fundamental to contemporary mathematical analysis. In their exploration of mathematical infinity, Indian mathematicians achieved insights that reveal mathematics as universal language capable of describing patterns that transcend cultural boundaries and historical limitations to express relationships that govern cosmic organization itself. In the hidden chambers beneath medieval Indian temples, where stone corridors echo with the whispers of centuries, alchemical laboratories once hummed with systematic investigation into matter's fundamental properties. These weren't crude proto-scientific workshops, fumbling toward chemistry through superstition and trial and error, but sophisticated research facilities where Rasayana practitioners developed metallurgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and material transformations that anticipate modern chemistry while achieving results that contemporary science struggles to replicate. Picture the scene in a 10th century laboratory beneath Khajuraho's temples, where mercury gleams like liquid silver in carefully controlled vessels, while master alchemists manipulate its properties through processes that combine precise chemical knowledge with consciousness-altering techniques that transform both operator and material. The Rasayana texts describe mercury not as simple elemental metal, but as transformative substance capable of transmuting base materials into precious metals while conferring longevity and enhanced capabilities upon practitioners who master its secrets. The mercury purification process is described in texts like the Rasarnava demonstrate sophisticated understanding of chemical properties, purification techniques, and controlled reactions that require knowledge of oxidation reduction chemistry, pH manipulation, and thermal management. The 18 different purification procedures for mercury create progressively refined materials with properties that differ substantially from natural metallic mercury in ways that suggest systematic chemical modification. Consider the laboratory equipment described in alchemical texts: specialized furnaces that maintain precise temperature control, distillation apparatus for separating volatile compounds, and containment systems designed for working with corrosive materials and toxic vapors. The technical descriptions reveal engineering knowledge that enabled controlled chemical reactions, systematic experimentation, and reproducible results across different laboratories and practitioners. The alloy creation techniques documented in Rasayana texts describe methods for combining mercury with various metals to create compounds with unusual properties, materials that remain flexible at normal temperatures, resist corrosion under extreme conditions, and display electromagnetic characteristics that seem to anticipate modern materials science. Some of these mercury-based alloys allegedly possessed properties that enabled their use in advanced technological applications. The pharmaceutical applications of processed mercury challenge modern understanding of toxicology and medicinal chemistry. The text describes systematic methods for neutralizing mercury's poisonous properties while enhancing its therapeutic effects through chemical combinations and processing techniques that allegedly create safe, effective medicines for treating various ailments. Contemporary attempts to replicate these preparations have produced mixed results that suggest missing knowledge about crucial processing steps. The consciousness-altering aspects of alchemical practice suggest understanding of how chemical processes interact with human awareness to facilitate both material transformation and psychological development. The texts describe how the alchemist's mental state affects experimental outcomes, how certain chemical procedures must be performed while maintaining specific meditative awareness, and how successful transmutation requires integration of material manipulation with consciousness modification. The laboratory security measures described in various texts reveal understanding of the dangerous nature of alchemical research and the need to protect both practitioners and knowledge from unauthorized access. The hidden location of laboratories, the elaborate initiation procedures for students, and the coded language used in alchemical texts demonstrate systematic approaches to maintaining operational security while preserving crucial technical knowledge. The energy manipulation techniques associated with advanced Rasayana practice describe methods for controlling electromagnetic fields, generating electrical effects, and manipulating what the texts call subtle energies through chemical preparations and consciousness-based procedures. While such capabilities challenge conventional scientific understanding, the consistent technical descriptions across different texts suggests systematic investigation of phenomena that modern physics might categorize as electromagnetic or quantum mechanical effects. The transmutation claims that form the centerpiece of alchemical literature describe systematic methods for converting base metals into gold through processes that involve mercury as catalytic agent, specific chemical reagents, and controlled environmental conditions. While mainstream chemistry dismisses transmutation as impossible without nuclear reaction, the consistent technical details across independent texts suggest either remarkable collective delusion or actual chemical processes that achieve results through mechanisms not yet understood by conventional chemistry. The biological applications of alchemical preparations extend beyond simple medicine into realms of life extension, enhancement of physical capabilities, and modification of consciousness that suggest biotechnology applications using chemical agents. The texts describe systematic approaches to slowing aging processes, enhancing mental capacity, and achieving physical capabilities that exceed normal human limits through carefully prepared alchemical compounds. The materials science applications described in advanced texts include methods for creating substances with unusual properties, metals that remain liquid at room temperature, crystalline structures that generate electrical effects, and composite materials that display characteristics not found in natural substances. Some descriptions suggest understanding of nanotechnology principles and molecular engineering techniques that contemporary material science has only recently begun to explore. The mathematical precision required for successful alchemical procedures demonstrates integration of quantitative analysis with chemical manipulation that anticipates modern analytical chemistry. The texts specify exact proportions, precise timing sequences, and controlled environmental conditions that require measurement capabilities and mathematical understanding that exceed what simple craft traditions typically employ. The international connections evident in Indian alchemical texts reveal knowledge exchange with Chinese, Islamic, and eventually European alchemical traditions that created global networks for sharing technical information, experimental results, and theoretical insights. The consistency of certain techniques across different cultural contexts suggests underlying chemical principles that transcend cultural boundaries while adapting to local materials and conditions. The preservation challenges facing alchemical knowledge reflect the secretive nature of the practices, the dangerous materials involved, and the political pressures that often drove practitioners underground. Many techniques have been lost due to inadequate documentation, broken transmission chains, and deliberate destruction of laboratories and libraries during periods of political upheaval. As midnight settles over temple complexes where hidden chambers once blazed with alchemical fire, we contemplate the possibility that medieval Indian scientists achieved understanding of matter manipulation that our own chemistry has yet to fully comprehend. The stone laboratories remain silent now, their furnaces cold, but their legacy persists in techniques that might hold keys to materials science applications that modern technology continues to pursue through different theoretical frameworks and experimental approaches. The mercury gleams in museum cases, now inert and safe, yet the texts describe it as gateway material, capable of unlocking transformative possibilities that bridge the gap between chemistry and consciousness, between material manipulation and transcendent understanding, secrets that wait in Sanskrit verses for investigators bold enough to explore the dangerous territories where ancient alchemy intersects with contemporary scientific possibility. In the sacred verses of the Rig Veda, over 100 hymns celebrate a mysterious elixir whose properties transcend simple fermented beverages to enter realms of biotechnology and consciousness enhancement that challenge our understanding of ancient pharmaceutical capabilities. Soma, the divine drink that grants immortality, enhances perception, and provides communion with cosmic forces, remains one of the most enigmatic substances in human history, defying identification despite centuries of scholarly investigation. Picture the Vedic ritual scene as described in ancient hymns. Priests prepare the precious soma, through elaborate procedures involving specific plants, controlled fermentation, precise timing, and consciousness-altering techniques that transform ordinary botanical materials into transcendent elixir. The preparation isn't simple brewing, but systematic biotechnology that requires botanical knowledge, biochemical understanding, and processing techniques that suggest advanced pharmaceutical capabilities. The plant identification problem has puzzled botanists for millennia. Candidates range from psychoactive mushrooms to various flowering plants, yet none fully match the comprehensive properties attributed to properly prepared soma. The texts describe not a single plant, but complex preparation involving multiple botanical components, specific harvesting procedures, and processing techniques that create entirely new substances through controlled chemical transformation. Consider the physiological effects described in Vedic texts: enhanced perception that reveals normally invisible phenomena, expanded consciousness that provides access to cosmic knowledge, physical vitalization that grants extraordinary strength and endurance, and life extension that approaches immortality. These aren't simple intoxication effects, but systematic enhancement of human capabilities through biochemical intervention that suggests understanding of neuropharmacology and life extension technology. The preparation procedures documented in various texts reveal sophisticated understanding of fermentation chemistry, pH control, temperature management, and contamination prevention that requires systematic knowledge of biotechnology principles. The specific timing requirements, environmental controls, and quality assessment techniques suggest pharmaceutical manufacturing capabilities that anticipate modern biotechnology through different theoretical frameworks and practical methods. The consciousness-enhancing properties attributed to soma challenge conventional assumptions about ancient understanding of neurochemistry and psychological manipulation. The text describes systematic methods for inducing specific altered states, enhancing memory and learning, facilitating communication with non-physical entities, and achieving transcendent awareness that suggests pharmaceutical intervention in consciousness processes. The immortality claims associated with soma consumption appear throughout Vedic literature with consistency that suggests either remarkable collective delusion or actual life extension technology using biochemical agents. The descriptions indicate not simple life prolongation, but fundamental alteration of aging processes, disease resistance, and cellular regeneration that anticipates contemporary anti-aging research through biotechnological approaches. The divine communication aspects of soma experience describe systematic methods for accessing information sources that transcend normal human knowledge, cosmic databases, universal libraries, and intelligence networks that provide knowledge unavailable through conventional learning processes. While such claims challenge scientific materialism, the consistent technical descriptions suggest phenomena that might involve consciousness technologies operating through biochemical manipulation. The manufacturing complexity described for optimal soma preparation requires botanical expertise, chemical knowledge, and processing capabilities that exceed simple craft brewing to enter realms of sophisticated pharmaceutical manufacturing. The quality control procedures, standardization methods, and batch consistency requirements suggest industrial-level biotechnology adapted to ancient technological contexts. The regional variations in soma preparation techniques reveal adaptation of core biotechnology principles to different geographical conditions, local plant availability, and cultural preferences, while maintaining essential therapeutic and consciousness-enhancing properties. The flexibility suggests underlying scientific principles rather than rigid formulaic procedures that couldn't adapt to changing circumstances. The security measures surrounding soma knowledge demonstrate understanding of the dangerous potential inherent in consciousness-altering biotechnology. The restricted access to preparation methods, the elaborate initiation procedures for qualified practitioners, and the coded language used in technical descriptions reveal systematic approaches to preventing unauthorized access to potentially dangerous pharmaceutical capabilities. The therapeutic applications of soma, described in medical texts, suggest pharmaceutical versatility that exceeds simple psychoactive properties to include systematic treatment of physical ailments, psychological disorders, and spiritual development challenges. The text describes specific formulations for different medical conditions, dosage protocols for various therapeutic applications, and combination therapies that integrate soma with other pharmaceutical agents. The astronomical timing incorporated into soma preparation suggests understanding of how cosmic cycles influence biological processes, chemical reactions, and consciousness states in ways that optimize pharmaceutical effectiveness through environmental synchronization. The correlation between celestial events and biochemical processes anticipates chronobiology research while suggesting awareness of subtle environmental influences on pharmaceutical manufacturing. The trade networks required to obtain exotic ingredients for advanced soma preparations reveal sophisticated commercial systems that could acquire rare botanical materials from distant geographical regions. The supply chain management, quality verification, and transport preservation techniques suggest logistical capabilities that supported complex pharmaceutical manufacturing across extensive territorial networks. The decline and loss of authentic soma preparation techniques coincides with historical periods of cultural disruption, foreign invasion, and the breakdown of traditional knowledge transmission systems. The disappearance of crucial botanical knowledge, the destruction of preparation facilities, and the persecution of qualified practitioners created knowledge gaps that subsequent generations have struggled to reconstruct. Contemporary attempts to identify and recreate soma have produced partial successes that achieve some of the described effects while failing to replicate the complete range of properties attributed to authentic preparations. The research suggests that crucial elements-specific plant varieties, processing techniques, or environmental factors remain missing from modern reconstruction attempts. As dawn breaks over landscapes where the sacred plants once grew in abundance, we contemplate the possibility that ancient biotechnology achieved pharmaceutical capabilities that our own medical science has yet to equal. The knowledge sleeps in cryptic verses now, encoded in Sanskrit hymns that preserve technical information through poetic language that conceals as much as it reveals about humanity's earliest experiments with consciousness-enhancing biotechnology. The mystery endures in laboratory research that seeks to unlock biochemical secrets hidden in mythological language in botanical expeditions that search for surviving plant varieties that might carry genetic memory of ancient pharmaceutical potential and in consciousness. Research that explores whether human awareness itself might be the crucial missing ingredient in recreating the divine elixir that once granted mortals temporary access to immortal capabilities. The smoke of burning manuscripts still seems to drift through the ruins of Nalanda, where the world's first international university once housed nearly 1 million texts in libraries, so vast that fires burned for months after invading armies put torch to palm leaf and paper. The destruction of India's ancient centers of learning represents one of history's greatest knowledge catastrophes, intellectual treasures accumulated across centuries, vanishing in flames that consumed not merely books, but entire civilizations' worth of scientific, philosophical, and technological wisdom. Picture the scene at Nalanda in 1193 as Bakhtiar Khalji's forces systematically destroyed libraries that had preserved knowledge for over 15 centuries. The complex housed texts in dozens of languages covering every branch of human learning mathematics that wouldn't be rediscovered for centuries. Astronomical calculations of remarkable precision, medical treatises describing surgical procedures that European medicine wouldn't achieve until modern times, and philosophical investigations that anticipated developments in logic and consciousness studies. The scale of destruction defies modern comprehension. Nalanda's libraries reportedly contained over 900,000 manuscripts, making it larger than the famous Library of Alexandria at its peak. The burning continued for 3 months, suggesting either enormous quantities of material or systematic effort to ensure complete destruction. Contemporary accounts describe smoke clouds that darken the sky for days, visible from distances exceeding 50 kilometers. The systematic nature of the destruction suggests deliberate targeting of knowledge preservation centers rather than incidental war damage. Takshashila, Vikramarshila, Odantapuri, and dozens of smaller academic centers suffered similar fates during the same historical period, indicating coordinated campaigns specifically designed to eliminate India's intellectual infrastructure rather than simple military conquest. Consider what was lost in the flames. Astronomical texts that calculated planetary positions with extraordinary precision. Mathematical treatises that contained concepts European scholars wouldn't discover for centuries. Medical knowledge that describes surgical procedures and pharmaceutical preparations of remarkable sophistication. And philosophical works that investigated consciousness and reality with analytical rigor that anticipated modern cognitive science. The engineering knowledge that perished in these fires included architectural techniques for earthquake-resistant construction, metallurgical processes for creating superior alloys, hydraulic engineering for advanced irrigation systems, and manufacturing methods for textiles, ceramics, and metal goods that European technology couldn't match. The technological implications of this knowledge loss affected human development for centuries. The preservation efforts attempted by scholars who saw destruction approaching revealed desperate attempts to save crucial knowledge through hasty copying, secret hiding places, and transport to remote locations. Some manuscripts were buried in sealed chambers, others hidden in cave monasteries, and the most precious texts carried by fleeing scholars to Tibet, Southeast Asia, and other regions where Indian intellectual traditions might survive. The international scope of knowledge destruction extended beyond India as borders, as invading forces pursued retreating scholars and systematically destroyed branch libraries and educational centers throughout Central Asia, Afghanistan, and neighboring regions. The campaign eliminated not only the central repositories, but also the distributed network that had preserved and transmitted Indian knowledge across vast geographical areas. The human cost exceeded the material destruction, as thousands of scholars, teachers, and students perished defending their libraries or died during forced relocations. The elimination of intellectual communities broke knowledge transmission chains that had operated for generations, creating gaps in learning that affected practical technologies, theoretical understanding, and cultural continuity across multiple civilizations. The economic impact of destroying India's knowledge centers crippled educational systems, technological development, and cultural production throughout regions that had depended on Indian intellectual leadership. The loss of academic infrastructure eliminated training centers for physicians, astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, creating skill shortages that affected multiple societies for generations. The surviving fragments scattered throughout Asian libraries provide tantalizing glimpses of the intellectual wealth that perished in the flames. Manuscripts preserved in Tibet, Ceylon, and Southeast Asia represent tiny fractions of the original collections, yet they contain mathematical concepts, scientific principles, and technological descriptions that continue to influence contemporary research and development. The reconstruction attempts undertaken by later scholars reveal both the magnitude of loss and the resilience of intellectual traditions that survived despite systematic destruction. Mathematical knowledge preserved through oral tradition, astronomical techniques maintained by practicing astronomers, and medical knowledge continued by traditional physicians enabled partial recovery of some intellectual capabilities. The psychological impact of knowledge destruction created trauma that affected intellectual confidence and cultural identity throughout regions that had participated in India as knowledge networks. The elimination of prestigious learning centers demoralized intellectual communities and discouraged the types of investigation and innovation that had characterized ancient Indian civilization. The strategic implications of destroying India's libraries become apparent when considering how knowledge preservation centers functioned as power bases that enabled technological and cultural influence extending far beyond political boundaries. The elimination of these intellectual hubs shifted regional power balances and eliminated sources of innovation that had driven technological development throughout Asian civilizations. The modern archaeological investigations of destroyed libraries reveal construction techniques, preservation methods, and organizational systems that enabled these ancient institutions to maintain massive collections across centuries. The sophisticated climate control, cataloging systems, and security measures suggest library science capabilities that anticipated modern information management through different technological approaches. The digital reconstruction projects currently attempting to recover lost knowledge through scattered surviving manuscripts, traditional oral knowledge, and archaeological evidence demonstrate continuing efforts to repair intellectual damage inflicted centuries ago. Computer analysis of fragments, linguistic reconstruction of lost texts, and collaborative international research represent modern attempts to resurrect ancient wisdom. The comparative analysis with other historical library destructions, Alexandria, Baghdad, Constantinople, reveals patterns in how civilizations lose accumulated knowledge and the long-term consequences of intellectual infrastructure destruction. The Indian case represents perhaps the most comprehensive elimination of a major intellectual tradition in recorded history. As twilight settles over the ruins where great libraries once illuminated human understanding, we contemplate the fragility of knowledge and the devastating consequences when intellectual infrastructure faces systematic destruction. The foundations still show burn marks from fires that consumed centuries of human investigation, innovation, and wisdom that might have accelerated human development by generations if preserved. The silence holds echoes of scholars who died protecting manuscripts they knew contained irreplaceable knowledge of students, who fled carrying whatever fragments they could save, and of intellectual traditions that vanished so completely that we can only guess at their contributions to human understanding through the gaps they left in global knowledge development. The sculptured walls of Angkor Wat depict beings of enormous stature engaged in cosmic battles, while Indian temple art throughout the subcontinent shows similar figures asuras, rakshasas, and nagas, whose physical descriptions challenge comfortable assumptions about mythological versus historical accounts. These aren't crude primitive carvings, but detailed artistic representations, created by sophisticated civilizations with apparent familiarity with beings whose existence mainstream anthropology dismisses as pure imagination. Picture the scene described in the Ramayana when Hanuman encounters Sarasa, a giantess whose mouth expands to cosmic proportions, or when Rama's forces battle Ravana's army of Rakshasas, whose individual warriors possess strength that requires multiple human opponents. The texts provide specific physical descriptions: unusual height, disproportionate limb structure, distinctive facial features, and capabilities that exceed normal human parameters in ways that suggest systematic observation rather than creative fantasy. The Mahabharata contains detailed accounts of Bhima's encounters with various non-human beings whose physical characteristics receive precise description. The text mentions beings with unusual skeletal structure, distinctive dental patterns, and physiological capabilities that differ substantially from standard human anatomy. These aren't casual references, but systematic catalogs of physical variations that suggest familiarity with actual biological diversity rather than imaginary creatures. Consider the archaeological evidence that complicates simple dismissal of these accounts. Skeletal remains discovered throughout India show evidence of human populations with unusual physical characteristics, individuals of exceptional height, distinctive bone structure, and anatomical features that don't match modern human variation patterns. While mainstream anthropology explains these as normal variation, the consistency of unusual characteristics across different sites suggests possible systematic differences. The genetic research conducted on ancient DNA samples from various Indian archaeological sites reveals population diversity that exceeds what simple migration and local adaptation would predict. Some genetic signatures suggested mixture with populations that don't match any known human lineages, raising questions about the biological history of ancient Indian populations and the possibility of hybridization with groups whose genetic heritage remains unidentified. The megalithic construction sites throughout India contain stone blocks whose size and placement would require engineering capabilities that exceed what conventional human labor could achieve without advanced machinery. The precision of placement, the weights involved, and the construction techniques suggest either advanced technology or physical capabilities that exceed normal human parameters, capabilities that ancient texts attribute to giant builders and non-human construction workers. The Puranic genealogies describe systematic intermarriage between human royal families and various non-human lineages that allegedly produced hybrid offspring with enhanced capabilities. These accounts provide detailed genetic information, inheritance patterns, physical characteristics, and capability modifications that read like systematic breeding programs designed to create individuals with specific enhanced traits. The physiological descriptions of Naga serpent beings with human-like intelligence and culture appear throughout Indian literature with consistency that suggests systematic observation of actual populations rather than mythological invention. The texts describe not monsters, but sophisticated beings with distinctive physical characteristics, advanced technological capabilities, and social organization that parallels human civilization while maintaining significant biological differences. The accounts of Vanara's forest beings with human intelligence but distinctive physical characteristics provide detailed descriptions of social organization, technological capabilities, and cultural achievements that suggest advanced civilization adapted to forest environments. The descriptions indicate not primitive animals, but sophisticated societies with capabilities that enabled them to construct cities, maintain armies, and develop technologies appropriate to their environmental contexts. The Asura civilizations described in various texts demonstrate technological and organizational capabilities that often exceeded human achievements during comparable time periods. The descriptions suggest not evil demons, but advanced civilizations with different physical characteristics, alternative technological approaches, and social organizations that brought them into conflict with human societies competing for territorial and resource control. The hybridization accounts throughout Indian literature describe systematic genetic engineering that produced individuals with enhanced physical capabilities, extended lifespans, and unusual talents that exceeded normal human parameters. The descriptions include specific procedures, controlled breeding programs, and genetic manipulation techniques that anticipate modern biotechnology through different theoretical frameworks and practical methods. The decline narratives that explain the disappearance of these non-human populations suggest environmental changes, warfare, and genetic degradation that eliminated distinct lineages while leaving trace influences in surviving human populations. The accounts describe not magical disappearances, but biological and social processes that could account for the elimination of minority populations through natural selection and cultural assimilation. The modern cryptozoological investigations that search for surviving populations of unusual humanoid beings in remote regions of India continue to produce reports that match ancient descriptions of Yetish forest giants and other beings whose existence mainstream science dismisses, but that local populations continue to encounter. The consistency of modern reports with ancient accounts suggests possible survival of remnant populations in isolated environments. The comparative mythology analysis reveals that similar accounts of giant beings, hybrid populations, and non-human civilizations appear in traditions throughout Asia, suggesting either widespread mythological themes or actual historical contact with populations whose physical characteristics differed significantly from standard human variation. The geographical consistency across independent traditions argues for historical rather than purely mythological origins. The genetic engineering implications of these accounts anticipate contemporary biotechnology capabilities for modifying human characteristics, creating hybrid organisms, and enhancing physical capabilities through controlled genetic manipulation. The ancient descriptions suggest understanding of genetic principles that modern biology has only recently developed through molecular genetics and genetic engineering technology. The archaeological censorship allegations suggest that discoveries of unusual skeletal remains, anomalous artifacts, and archaeological sites that do and conform to accepted human development models face systematic suppression or reinterpretation to maintain comfortable assumptions about human history and biological development. The claims remain controversial but persistent across multiple research contexts. As moonlight illuminates temple carvings that show humans interacting with beings of clearly non-human characteristics, we contemplate the possibility that ancient Indian civilization developed in a more biologically diverse environment than modern assumptions suggest. The stone figures continue their eternal dance, preserving in granite memory the possibility that human history includes chapters involving populations whose existence challenges comfortable assumptions about our species' exclusive dominance throughout recorded history. The myths may be memories after all genetic memories, cultural memories, and archaeological memories of times when humanity shared the planet with other intelligent species whose biological heritage, technological capabilities, and social organization created the complex interactions that ancient literature preserves. In accounts we've chosen to interpret as fantasy rather than face the implications of a more diverse and perhaps more dangerous ancient world. The ice cores drilled from Himalayan glaciers tell a story written in frozen water layers of ancient atmosphere that preserve evidence of dramatic climate shifts that transformed the Indian subcontinent from subtropical paradise to arid landscape over periods measured in decades rather than millennia. These climatic catastrophes coincide suspiciously with the mysterious disappearances of advanced civilizations whose achievements exceeded what their technological contexts should have supported. Picture the scene around 2200 BCE as described through paleoclimatic reconstruction. The mighty Saraswati river system begins its death spiral as changing monsoon patterns reduce rainfall across northwestern India by 60% within a single generation. The Harappan cities that depended on this water gradually empty as agricultural systems collapse, trade networks fail, and populations migrate toward regions where reliable water sources still support urban civilization. The geological evidence reveals environmental changes so rapid and severe that entire ecosystems transform within human lifespans. Pollen analysis shows forests converting to grasslands, grasslands becoming deserts, and river systems drying to seasonal streams within periods too short for gradual adaptation. These were gentle evolutionary changes, but environmental catastrophes that would have forced immediate responses from any civilizations dependent on affected resources. Consider the implications for technological preservation during such rapid environmental collapse. Advanced manufacturing requires stable resource supplies, skilled labor populations, and institutional continuity that environmental disasters routinely destroy. The metallurgical techniques that created rust-proof iron, the engineering knowledge that built earthquake-resistant architecture, and the mathematical understanding that enabled precise astronomical calculation would all face extinction when supporting civilizations collapsed under environmental pressure. The correlation between climate shifts and civilizational disappearances appears throughout Indian archaeological chronology with consistency that suggests causal relationships rather than coincidental timing. The flood legends preserved throughout Indian oral traditions describe catastrophic inundations that destroyed advanced cities, forcing survivors to rebuild civilization from scattered remnants. The geological evidence confirms that post-glacial sea level rise, combined with monsoon intensification periods, created flooding events that would have inundated coastal settlements and riverine cities throughout the subcontinent during multiple historical periods. The drought cycles documented through tree ring analysis, lake sediment cores, and archaeological stratigraphy reveal recurring patterns of severe aridity that lasted decades or centuries. These megadroughts would have eliminated agricultural surpluses that supported urban populations, specialized craftsmen, and the institutional infrastructure required to maintain advanced technologies across generations of environmental stress. The volcanic events recorded in Deccan Plateau geology suggest periodic episodes of massive eruption that would have created environmental catastrophes affecting regional and possibly global climate patterns. The Toba supervolcanic eruption around 74,000 years ago created environmental conditions that pushed human populations to near extinction, while smaller volcanic events throughout recorded history created shorter-term but still devastating environmental disruptions. The sea level fluctuations documented through marine archaeology reveal coastal changes that would have eliminated port cities, trade networks, and the maritime infrastructure that supported international commerce and knowledge exchange. The submerged cities discovered off India's coasts suggest that advanced civilizations repeatedly developed in coastal regions only to face destruction when changing sea levels reclaimed their territories. The monsoon instability patterns revealed through paleoclimatic analysis show that India's agricultural foundation has faced recurring disruption through changes in seasonal rainfall timing, intensity, and geographical distribution. The civilizations that developed during stable monsoon periods would have faced collapse when changing atmospheric circulation patterns shifted precipitation toward different regions or eliminated reliable seasonal patterns entirely. The desertification processes documented throughout northwestern India show rapid transitions from productive agricultural land to uninhabitable desert that occurred within timeframes measured in decades rather than centuries. The Thar Desert's expansion eliminated territories that had supported dense populations and sophisticated cities, forcing massive population relocations that disrupted existing social and technological systems. The glacial fluctuations in the Himalayas affected river systems throughout northern India by altering the timing and volume of glacial melt that fed major rivers during dry seasons. The advance and retreat of glaciers created flood drought cycles that would have stressed agricultural systems' urban infrastructure beyond their adaptive capabilities during particularly severe climate transitions. The ecosystem collapse events documented through paleobotanical analysis reveal periods when environmental changes eliminated the biodiversity that supported human populations through hunting, gathering, and early agricultural practices. The loss of forest cover, grassland productivity, and freshwater resources would have forced technological and social adaptations that might not have been achievable within the timeframes that environmental changes allowed. The migration patterns suggested by archaeological evidence show repeated episodes of population movement from environmentally degraded regions toward areas that retained adequate resources for supporting urban civilization. These climate refugees would have carried fragmentary knowledge from abandoned civilizations, potentially preserving some advanced technologies while losing others during the disruption of forced relocation. The knowledge preservation challenges facing any civilization undergoing rapid environmental collapse include maintaining educational systems, preserving written records, and continuing technological practices when institutional infrastructure faces destruction. The techniques for creating advanced metallurgy, precision engineering, and sophisticated mathematics would have been particularly vulnerable to loss during periods when survival required immediate practical responses rather than long-term knowledge maintenance. The recovery patterns documented through archaeological sequences show that civilizations repeatedly rebuilt advanced capabilities after Environmental disruptions, suggesting that knowledge preservation techniques allowed some technological traditions to survive collapse periods and eventually resurface when environmental conditions again supported complex social organization and technological development. The cyclical nature of climate-driven civilizational collapse suggests that advanced human societies have repeatedly achieved sophisticated technological capabilities only to lose them during environmental catastrophes that eliminated the resource base and institutional continuity required to maintain complex technologies. This pattern might explain archaeological anomalies that show advanced capabilities appearing and disappearing throughout human history. As storms gather over landscapes that have witnessed the rise and fall of multiple civilizations, we recognize that human achievement remains vulnerable to environmental forces that operate according to geological and astronomical cycles beyond human control. The climate continues its ancient rhythms indifferent to human plans and achievements, reminding us that our own technological civilization faces similar environmental challenges that have repeatedly tested humanity's ability to maintain advanced capabilities across the inevitable climate transitions that planetary history imposes upon terrestrial life. The monsoon winds carry memories of civilizations that thought themselves permanent, of technologies that seemed eternal, and of knowledge that appeared secure until environmental forces demonstrated the fragility of human achievement against the vast timescales and powerful forces that shape planetary destiny across cycles that dwarf human historical experience, while determining the ultimate fate of every civilization that has ever risen to challenge the elements. As twilight settles over the Ganges and the first stars appear above temple spires that have stood for over a millennium, we find ourselves at the end of a journey that began with questions and concludes with mysteries even deeper than those we set out to explore. The accumulated evidence, archaeological anomalies, technological achievements, literary descriptions, and scientific capabilities forms a mosaic that challenges comfortable assumptions about human development and the linear progression of technological capability. The Iron Pillar still stands in Delhi, rust-free and eternal, its metallurgical secrets intact after 16 centuries of exposure to elements that should have reduced it to oxidized powder decades ago. The precision of its alloy composition, the sophistication of its forging techniques, and the mystery of its corrosion resistance represent technological achievement that exceeds what Bronze Age foundries should have accomplished using traditional methods and available resources. The underwater ruins of Dwarka continue to emerge from marine archaeological surveys, revealing urban planning, architectural sophistication, and construction techniques that confirm the historical reality behind mythological accounts. The submerged city represents systematic urban development, advanced engineering, and maritime infrastructure that demonstrates capabilities, matching the epic descriptions that scholars once dismissed as pure imagination. The Vedic texts preserve mathematical concepts, astronomical calculations, and technical descriptions with precision that anticipates modern scientific understanding by millennia. The infinite series calculations, the accurate cosmic measurements, and the detailed technological specifications suggest preservation of knowledge from sources whose scientific capabilities exceeded what historical context should have supported through gradual developmental progression. The Vimana descriptions continue to puzzle aviation engineers with their technical accuracy, aerodynamic principles, and propulsion concepts that parallel contemporary research into advanced flight technologies. The detailed specifications, operational procedures, and performance capabilities described in ancient texts suggest either remarkable prescient imagination or preserved memory of actual technological achievements that history has forgotten. The medical knowledge preserved in Ayurvedic traditions demonstrates understanding of human physiology, surgical techniques, and pharmaceutical preparation that achieved results modern medicine has only recently matched through industrial technology and scientific methodology. The consciousness-based healing approaches, the life extension practices, and the surgical capabilities suggest medical knowledge that transcended simple empirical observation to achieve systematic understanding of biological processes. The acoustic engineering incorporated into temple architecture reveals sophisticated understanding of wave mechanics, resonance phenomena, and consciousness manipulation through controlled sound environments. The precision of acoustic design, the integration with astronomical alignments, and the therapeutic applications suggest architectural knowledge that combined advanced physics with practical applications for enhancing human experience and capability. The astronomical observatories that still function with modern accuracy demonstrate mathematical sophistication, engineering precision, and systematic observation programs that achieved computational results matching electronic calculation through purely mechanical analog. Computers designed with understanding of celestial mechanics that anticipates contemporary astrophysics. The climate evidence reveals environmental catastrophes that repeatedly eliminated advanced civilizations whose achievements exceeded their supposed technological contexts. The pattern of rise and collapse suggests that human societies have repeatedly achieved sophisticated capabilities only to lose them during environmental crises that destroyed the resource base and institutional continuity required for maintaining complex technologies. The manuscript libraries that burned for months contain knowledge accumulated across centuries, mathematical treatises, astronomical calculations, medical procedures, and technological descriptions whose loss created gaps in human understanding that affected global knowledge development for generations. The systematic destruction eliminated not only recorded information, but also the educational institutions and scholarly communities that had maintained advanced intellectual traditions. The metallurgical anomalies, the architectural precision, the mathematical sophistication, and the astronomical accuracy that characterize ancient Indian achievements collectively suggest civilizational capabilities that challenge linear models of technological development. The evidence points toward knowledge preservation from sources whose scientific and technological achievements exceeded what gradual development within known historical contexts should have produced. The cyclical time concepts preserved in Hindu cosmology describe recurring patterns of civilizational rise and decline operating across timescales that dwarf human historical experience. The mathematical precision of these cosmic cycles, combined with their correlation to actual environmental patterns, suggests systematic understanding of long-term planetary processes that affect civilizational sustainability across geological timescales. The questions multiply rather than resolve as investigation deepens. Were the technological anomalies products of exceptional individual genius working within normal historical contexts? Were they recovery and application of knowledge preserved from previous civilizational cycles that achieved higher technological capabilities? Were they influences from external sources whose nature and origins remain unidentified? Or were they achievements of human societies whose capabilities we underestimated due to incomplete historical records and biased assumptions about ancient limitations? The possibility emerges that human civilization itself might be cyclical, rising and falling according to environmental patterns, cosmic cycles, and internal dynamics that operate across timescales exceeding individual human comprehension. The technological achievements that seem impossible within their historical contexts might represent normal capabilities that civilizations develop when environmental conditions, resource availability, and social organization reach optimal configurations. The knowledge preservation methods embedded in mythology, architectural monuments, and cultural traditions suggest systematic approaches to maintaining crucial information across civilizational collapse periods. The encoding of technical information in religious texts, the incorporation of scientific principles in temple architecture, and the preservation of mathematical concepts in cultural practices represent strategies for ensuring that essential knowledge survives even when supporting institutions face destruction. The modern rediscovery of ancient capabilities through archaeological investigation, textual analysis, and scientific verification demonstrates that knowledge lost during historical disruptions can be recovered through patient research and systematic investigation. The ongoing revelations suggest that current understanding represents only preliminary glimpses of ancient achievements whose full scope remains hidden beneath layers of time, prejudice, and incomplete investigation. As darkness deepens over landscapes that have witnessed the rise and fall of multiple civilizations, we recognize that our own technological society faces similar challenges that have tested human achievement throughout history. Environmental change, resource depletion, social disruption, and knowledge preservation present ongoing threats to civilizational continuity that require wisdom preserved from previous experience with similar challenges. The ancient achievements remind us that human potential exceeds what current educational systems, social organizations, and technological frameworks typically develop. The mathematical insights, engineering capabilities, and scientific understanding demonstrated by ancient Indian civilization suggest that human consciousness itself possesses capabilities that remain largely untapped by contemporary culture and education. The journey through ancient Indian mysteries concludes not with answers, but with recognition that the questions themselves reveal possibilities for human achievement that transcend current limitations and assumptions. The evidence preserved in stone, metal, and manuscript suggests that our ancestors achieved heights of understanding and capability, that our own civilization is still climbing toward achievements that demonstrate human potential for transcending apparent limitations through systematic investigation, technological innovation, and consciousness development. The stars shine down on ruins and monuments that hold secrets about human capability, ancient knowledge, and lost technologies that might provide keys for addressing contemporary challenges and achieving sustainable technological development that harmonizes with natural cycles rather than opposing them. In their eternal light, the possibility remains that ancient wisdom and modern science might converge toward understanding that enables humanity to achieve its full potential while avoiding the cyclical collapses that have repeatedly eliminated civilizations that reached technological heights but failed to achieve the wisdom necessary for maintaining their achievements across the vast timescales that planetary existence demands. The Ganges continues its eternal flow, carrying forward the memories and possibilities encoded in its sacred waters, while temple bells ring across the landscape with sounds that have called seekers toward truth for thousands of years. In their resonance, we hear echoes of ancient achievements and intimations of future possibilities that await human courage to explore the territories where science and consciousness, technology and wisdom, ancient knowledge and modern understanding converge toward truths that might transform human civilization into something worthy of the cosmic inheritance that Indian tradition suggests has always been humanity as ultimate destiny. If you found yourself drawn into this journey through time and mystery, consider subscribing to explore more hidden chapters of human history that challenge everything we thought we knew about our ancient past.